The dark horses of the Liberty A-League this season, Perth Glory, travel to Service FM Stadium in Adelaide for what is a really vital clash in their push for the top four. They're undefeated since the 1st of Jan, and it's the Glory who meet a red side playing for pride and looking to play spoiler for the rest of the Liberty A-League season. Hello and welcome to Dub Zone, our interactive coverage of the Liberty A-League season. I'm Neve Owens. It is awesome to have your company on this 3-game Saturday afternoon. We are back and it's good to see you and to be here alongside, once again, our socials expert, Kat Haddad. Hello, Kat.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be back.
Always good to see you. And I believe you and Teo have been covering football together for the last 4 days or so. So I'm so glad you're both still here. You're both still talking. And Teo Palazzeri, always nice to see you.
And the same to you, Neve.
Lovely to have your company. And for the first time this Dub Zone season, which just goes to show they let absolutely anyone on the air these days, we've got former Matildas legend Alish Ferguson. Hello, Ish.
Thanks, Nevo. Just choose love.
Just
not
choose
hate,
love.
not anger.
Just choose love.
So much anger inside her. Towards Queenslanders, mostly.
On that note, and talking about Queensland, do you prefer to go as former Brisbane Raw player, or are you actually a little bit older than that and we should go Queensland Sting?
I'm still 25 in my head, so I played for both of them. Let's go Brisbane Raw.
There's been heaps happening this week, Kat, and not all of it good news from a Matildas perspective. Steph Catley, Gunners fans gutted, Tilly's fans a little bit worried. What do we know?
Well, we don't know a lot, but I'm hoping Alicia can help us out a little bit. But the
Probably
Arsenal
not.
team,
Who's Alicia?
Ish. Arsenal did announce that Steph Catley is out with an injury of some kind. They haven't given us too much other than the fact that it is a non-contact foot injury, which is unfortunate. Obviously, Steph Catley also plays for the Matildas outside of her duties with Arsenal as well. So, Ish, I wanted to ask you, what does a non-contact foot and injury mean to us non-football player folk?
To the non-medical people. Well, I think looking at Steph there, she's in a moon boot and on crutches. So that says to me that they don't want her to be weight-bearing. So it tends to be something like a stress fracture. So, I mean, an overuse injury. Steph has had some lower limb issues in the past with her calves and her feet and her ankles and stuff. And they've just had a huge workload as well. Lots of travel, lots of games, and maybe that could be what the issue is. But still plenty of time before the World Cup, so I don't think we need to be too worried.
The April international window, though, Teo, probably looking unlikely from Steph's perspective. So from a Matilda's standpoint, have we got Ellie Carpenter back in time? Do we look at that current crop and switching sides, or is there someone new you want to see enter the fray?
It's tough, isn't it? Because just this week, the Scotland game was announced prior to the England match. So it's 2 games with a short turnaround, meaning that if you have one solution for one game, you may not necessarily stick with them for both. Ellie Carpenter will be back, we assume, and that's great from a right-back point of view. I mean, are we looking at a situation where Charlotte Grant goes to left-back now? Are there other names? I mean, we've seen Tamiki Yallop pinch hit in there. We know Larissa Crummer is the Swiss Army knife of the team. Do you have a preference as to who your first choice alternative is if Steph Catley can't make the international window?
And if you just call out the Queenslander in that mix, we'll
Meeks,
100%
definitely
call you
Meeks.
out.
Always Meeks. Look, we want Ellie back in the team, don't we? She's a huge loss, and we want to see her back in the green and gold colours, especially before the World Cup. Charlie's such a versatile player as well, and her level of maturity over the course of this year has been great. She's had a lot more minutes through Ellie's injury as well. But, you know, I'd do exactly what you said, Tay. I'd put Charlie on one side, Ellie on the other. You could interchange them. They could switch over. Whatever works.
And with the injury to Elise Keller-Knight as well, I mean, we're at a point where, do you reckon Tony Gustafsson has heard of Gough Whitlam? Because if he hasn't, he has now. Tony, it's time. It's time for Kirsty Fenton to get her shot. We want another left-sided defender who is having an incredible A-League women's season and has been on a rapid trajectory ever since she debuted at Newcastle last season. I've been calling for her to be included. Yes, I would probably move Grant to the left and start Grant, but as far as building depth and bringing in another name, this is the moment. Steph Catley, we don't know how long this is going to be for. Hopefully, it is not long. She might even be back by the international window. I don't think an injury should force your hand into making the right decision. It's time.
But you're forcing his hand. Is that what you're doing, Teo?
Oh, he doesn't listen to me. But I'm gonna.
Exactly.
But hey, at least he might learn a little bit.
Tony, Teo's on the phone.
He might learn a little bit about Australian political history and Gough Whitlam, if nothing else.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I'm sure is part of our job here on Dub Zone. Absolutely. It is match week 17 this week. We've got 3 games coming up for you, simultaneous kickoffs at 3 o'clock this afternoon. And Teo, as we have a look at, we will in a moment's time at the ladder, some big games this week in the countdown to finals. finals.
Absolutely huge. Western United's last away trip of the season is up to Brisbane. Adelaide hosting Perth. Adelaide not mathematically eliminated from finals just yet. Wellington, this is big for them if they want to avoid the wooden spoon. Sydney FC, when we get to their team card, we'll see they've been injury and suspension hit. Wellington will never get a better chance to take points off them. Tomorrow, Western Sydney against Canberra United. Monday, the Melbourne Derby. We will put that in context in a moment.
So let's have a look at the ladder then, because this looks very different to how we ended Dub Zone last week, and it is with Sydney FC on top, equal on points with Western United, and that is because Canberra was docked 3 points by the game's governing body this week for fielding an ineligible player in their clash in Feb. So as it stands, Teo, Canberra's 2-1 win has been overturned, Sydney's been awarded the 3 points, and Canberra has until next Wednesday to appeal the decision. This could have huge ramifications for the finals race.
It certainly does, not least because it means that every team in the chasing pack wants Wanderers to get points off Canberra tomorrow, and they want City to win that derby just to keep the door to fourth spot open. Canberra could have been right there controlling their own destiny. Instead, it's advantage victory. Perth dropped points to Wanderers last weekend, and you see there, Western Sydney all but mathematically eliminated, but Adelaide with the extra game in hand. If they win today, they at least stay in the conversation.
So one can assume that an appeal is highly likely because this is big for Canberra. Let's have a listen to what their coach Negos Popovic had to say during the week.
There's 3 windows of opportunities to make substitution. We ended up using a 4th window. The little bit of confusion lies around what is the concussion protocol or what is an injury replacement. So we're working through it, and fingers crossed that it all goes our way.
Kind of key there, and Negos has identified it himself, whether it was a concussion replacement or an injury one, because we've got 2 very different outcomes depending on that decision.
Yeah, well, I mean, there'd have to be concussion protocol, so you would assume if they are going for that, then there's been a doctor who's made an assessment, and then they can appeal that. Also the assistant referee, maybe had some unclarity, didn't have enough clarity around that as well. It's pretty tough, especially it was quite late on in the game, wasn't it, too? And, yeah.
The 4th sub made after the 92nd minute.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? I think docking the 3 points is tough. However, it's in the competition rules, and it'll be interesting to see what comes of the appeal.
FA will ultimately decide the appeal, Teo. So it is with the APL on one side, Canberra United, assuming they do make that appeal on the other, and it comes down to the FA decision. Is it that final moment we saw there with Michelle Heyman coming off, the final substitution, the scoreline didn't change after that time, but is that the moment that we're really digging into here?
I think so, because Hayley Taylor-Young was not, as far as we know, concussed. If Canberra can produce a medical certificate saying one of their 4 substituted players had a concussion, then this is open and shut. They'll probably win the appeal. But if they can't, then we start to get into real grey area where you do need an arbiter to decide this. And I'm coming down on the side of practicality or fairness. That's the question. I think the fairest outcome would be to get the teams together and restart the game at 92:30 and play the last 3 minutes.
And how practical is that,
Unfortunately,
Teo?
that's completely impractical. If anything, it's a punishment for Sydney because you make them drive back down to Canberra. I mean, but I also think it's impractical to replay the game from scratch. I mean, I've been at A-League women's games where the sprinklers came on in stoppage time and the referee just blew for full time. There was no clamour to go back and play the extra minutes. It was Melbourne City against Brisbane Roar, if anyone's wondering. CB Smith Reserve. But
One of your favourite stadiums.
One of my favourite grounds. But the outcome for me, I think, if there's a way that Canberra can keep the points without getting FIFA upset, because a law of the game has been breached as opposed to the APL's competition rules, then I think the pragmatic outcome is Canberra should keep the 2-1 result and we should not have the points overturned. But I haven't actually heard the arguments of either party before going into this hearing, and I think that's where we'll get our answers from.
I wish you were the arbiter in the hearing, Teo. I would absolutely love that. And a hot mic to the rest of us to be able to listen to that reasoning as well. We'll find out more across the course of this week. Canberra United have until Wednesday night to decide whether or not to lodge that appeal, and we'll keep you right across it here on Dub Zone. That got a big response, Kat, on social media throughout the week, but there's been another number of other big stories doing the rounds as well.
Absolutely. It's been a week of football socials. The news is just coming left, right and centre, and obviously this Canberra United news was one that a lot of people were talking about, but another thing that everyone was talking about was the Sydney Morning Herald announcing that Sam Kerr is the most influential woman in Australian sport. in the world. She has been labelled the most influential woman in sport based on a list. She had 128 votes behind her as part of a panel that made this decision. And it's obviously amazing to see an Australian woman being given such an accolade of this sort. But Ish, being a part of WSL and seeing what Sam Kerr is doing overseas, I'd love to hear how that influence kind of has dissipated into the English environment as well. And we obviously see what she does here in Australia and the influence that she has. But what is that like overseas?
It's still huge. She's playing at one of the best clubs in the world, one of the most successful as well, under Emma Hayes. I think Emma was trying to get her to Chelsea for quite some time, and just knows how to get the best out of her as well. And seeing, Sam, her quality is that she's been able to transcend leagues, different styles of play, and she just keeps maturing and getting better. And she's adapted to the WSL, very well. And, she's going from strength to strength. She's everywhere. She's on FIFA, she understands her responsibility in the game as well. She's the last one, stays on the pitch, getting all the photos with all the fans. She understands how important she is as a role model.
Absolutely. Like you said, cover of FIFA next to Kylian Mbappe, Australia's #1 goal scorer. I mean, the list goes on. It's amazing to see her doing that. And in other news, something else that was being very much talked about was Corinne Diacre, the coach of the French national team, being sacked. We know there's been a lot of controversy surrounding that national team. The likes of Wendy Renard announcing that she was not going to play for the French team under her coaching, and then other players joining with her in that decision. So this is very interesting heading into the Women's World Cup. We are seeing a bit of contention in a few different teams around the world right now. Ish, what do you make of that decision by the French Football Federation?
I think there's been a fair bit of unrest in that camp for a while. Teo, we were talking about it earlier. And I think when you have one of your best players in the world, Wendy Renard, saying that she wants to make herself unavailable, then you've got a serious problem. And that team has a serious problem. So I think for the dynamic of the team, I think it's the right thing to do. It's a short lead into the World Cup, so it's important that they get the right person in who can prepare them. And I think someone who has just national team experience, because being a national team coach compared to a club coach is completely different. So you have such a short window of time to prepare your players, and you need that experience to know what you need to do and how quickly you can do it.
Absolutely. It will be interesting to see if the likes of Wendy Renard decides to play now that this decision has been made. But let's jump into some more news that happened over the week, which was the announcement of Coach of the Month and Player of the Month. So Player of the Month, Hilary Beale, well done. A fantastic achievement for the Western United player who we get to see play today as well. And then in addition to that, Coach of the Month.
Wait, again?
Yeah, I know. We're seeing Mark Torcaso take it out again. Coach of the Month. And we did find out through the grapevine that he has a lot of support from the school that he teaches at, St. Monica's in Victoria. And there may be students who are really infiltrating that voting system and making sure that Torcaso gets there every time.
Such a positive story, Teo. Big shout out to the St. Monica's students who back their teacher in. They're not voting for the opposition to try and throw him under the bus. They're behind Mark Torcaso all the way.
Great to see that Hilary Beale, the Western United player, perhaps is coming along for the ride. It's a dodgy election, but this time Hilary's winning.
Let's have a look at the lineups for this afternoon's games, shall we? Because we've got 3 big games kicking off. And Adelaide United, Perth Glory, we're going to be keeping a super close eye on this one, Teo. And Adelaide, while missing their skipper, have got a big name coming in on the bench. A surprise signing this week.
Yeah, 23-year-old Chrissy Panagaris, bit of a name that has really been one of those unlucky players from the South Australian NPL to never get a shot at that next level up. 26 goals in 21 games for Adelaide Comets. She's now on the bench. Fiona Wirtz back into the starting 11. The Dolan medalist looking to really have a strong finish to the season for the sake of defending her title as that particular player. As we see some of the numbers here, Perth Glory, 2 changes. Ella Mastrantonio goes to the bench, as does Alani Anchevsky. Sarah Kane and Hannah Blake, the fringe New Zealand international, come into the squad. No one out from last week's team. And of course, Tash Rigby in game number 89 scored her very first A-League women's goal last week, which is a great moment for her. And we're seeing her there on the screen, the Perth Glory captain.
That means that your favouritism for NBL Victoria has to be delayed slightly, and SA NBL gets a mention off the top today.
Hey, I like the South
about.
Australian NPL as well. I was advocating for some of their players in that league last season. Adelaide have only named 4 on the bench, and that's a trademark sign of a team that's been so hit by injury and has so many players out. Also, Isabel Hodgson unavailable for personal reasons today. I mean, it's a telltale sign when you're not naming the full 5 on the bench that you are down to the bare bones.
Brisbane, Western United, another game coming up this afternoon. Brisbane were missing a couple of their big Matildas names for the trip across the ditch last week, Teo, but they're both back into the starting side today.
They are. Katrina Gorrie and Larissa Crummer back in. There's a start as well for Holly McQueen, which is great given her history of overcoming injuries. And also Kaya Stevenson gets a start. The Raw fans have been clamouring for her to get more game time. Jessie Rashart, Talitha Kramer and Holly Palmer, interestingly, goes to the bench. Western United, their opponents today, just the one change from the team that was beaten 3-0 by Sydney FC. Emma Robers comes in, Danielle Steer goes to the bench.
And this is at Perry Park, your former home.
Yes, I know it well. I can't believe, is it flooded? You said it was flooded, Teo.
There was a flood.
The back pitch was probably always flooded because that was a car park that we used to train on, but I'm sure it's been improved since then.
Thankfully,
that was a while ago.
I mean, given what's happened in Brisbane in recent years, thankfully there was a flood warning, but it hasn't eventuated into a serious flood, so the game can go ahead.
Sydney FC take on Wellington Phoenix this afternoon as well, Teo. Sydney FC with a couple of big outs. Their captain suspended and they're missing their goalkeeper as well, Jada Wyman. So that is a couple of key changes for the Sky Blues.
Yeah, a cheek injury for Charlotte McLean means she's out. They've actually signed Sydney Margot Chevet, the former Western Sydney Wanderer, to sit on the bench as an injury replacement. Mary Stanich-Floody, who I think Teresa Polias had going to the Central Coast Mariners on the official A-League Women's podcast during the week in her fantasy draft, gets a start. I wonder if Ante's listening to the podcast again. And then Anna Green, the former Kiwi international, and Katie Offer go in goal for Sydney FC. Wellington bring in Paige Sanchel and Emma Ralston. Millie Clegg, my mail is she's right on the verge of a call-up to the New Zealand senior national team, the 17-year-old. She's been put on the bench for this one. Maybe we'll see her in the second half.
Claudia Bunge will join us later on this hour, a member of that New Zealand national side, so we might be able to ask her about that as well. All right, if you're new to Dubzone, like Alicia Ferguson, it is our simultaneous coverage of the afternoon's football in the Liberty A-League. We're going to bring you all 3 games. 2 of them have already kicked off, and when Brisbane Western United kicks off, we'll bring you that one as well. We'll call the key moments, and when I say we, I mean Teo. He'll get Isha's perspective on that as well, but if you want to take a deep dive into just one of these games in particular, head to 10 Play, head to Paramount Plus. You don't have to listen to us banging on if you don't want to. You can listen to the coverage and the call of each one of those games. But Teo, we're going to start in Adelaide because ultimately for those finals positions, this game for Perth in particular is massive.
It is, and Perth earlier in the season when Adelaide were on their winning streak and their defence was holding up, they won 1-0 away at Macedonia Park. So Perth are trying to return the favour here, get the 3 points on the road. A rarity that these two teams exchange home and aways with the away team winning. Not an easy road trip for either of them. Service FM Stadium has been quite a hot venue for a lot of the games, Saturdays or Sundays, regardless of kickoff time this year today. The weather not too bad. So I think that Adelaide, they've shown signs of life. They scored 2 against Melbourne Victory in a 2-2 draw, 2 against the team they lost to 4-2 last week, and Canberra United, and it means that they've at least found their goal-scoring touchback, but their defence is still pretty shaky. Perth, though, they'll be really disappointed that they were held to a 1-1 draw by the Western Sydney Wanderers in a home game last week because it handed the advantage in the finals race back to Victory. And I imagine Victory, Cat, will be watching on as a team today. I think their preferred outcome here would, to be honest, be an Adelaide win, not even a Perth draw. They want Perth dropping as many points as possible.
Absolutely. And if you are a Victory girl watching, #Dubzone, let us know. I love to know that some players sit and watch this in order to keep up with the game and all of that, because it's not just for the viewers, it's also for the players. It's a nice little resource for them to get across the game as well.
So we see Perth on the attack here. Sierra Hinson is in. There was a little grab at the shoulder there, and the referee is going to point. No penalty. I thought there might have been a decent penalty shout there, but gee, risky defending from Marushka Waldes. Sierra Hinson was in behind. Ish, talk us through the attacker's chance here. Did you see a foul?
Yeah, she did have her. I think she was already on her way down, though, Teo, to be honest. She was just reaching at that ball, wasn't it? It was kind of bouncing away from her. But I was just looking at that pitch. That pitch looks quite heavy. Like the grass looks quite long on the pitch and seemed a little bit bobbly there, but good opportunity.
You say already on the way down, but in that situation, as soon as a striker feels a hand on the shoulder, they probably, if they don't 100% think they're going to score the chance, they're probably going to throw themselves to the ground anyway, yeah?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, look, there was definitely contact there. She had to be pretty careful because she did have both arms up, actually, just trying to give her a little nudge on the shoulder. But I don't think there was too much in it.
So Beck Mackey is the referee for this one, as we see Perth just controlling the ball and controlling possession in the early stages of this match, giving their goalkeeper a touch. Morgan Aquino has kept her spot in goal, and they've had to bounce back and forth between Morgan Aquino and Sarah Langman this season. Not the first time that Perth have had that situation. It was Aquino and Courtney Newbon last campaign that were trading the gloves back and forth. As we see the ball here cleared by Tash Rigby down next to the byline, and Fiona Wirtz recycles the ball to Dylan Holmes, and a deflected pass into the area is cleared away. Sarah Kane for Perth to Sophia Sakalis, and now a counter-attack might be on as the ball goes out to the left. It's going to have too much on it for Izzy Folletta to run down.
I love that as a former striker, like former striker,
yeah.
You've already identified some excuses for the attacking sides there. A little bit of a bobble, maybe the grass isn't quite right.
Look, it always has an impact on the play. So, of course, you're just
well
like throwing
practiced.
me under the bus left, right and centre, Neva. You're getting them all in, aren't you, before I head
On
back to
that,
London?
on that, there's clearly a great friendship here because
I don't know.
straight from the get-go, Neve came for Ish, and I love it. But I think everyone, because I would like to also know, where did you two first meet? Was it
Sounds
when
like
you
a dating
were-
show, doesn't
I
it?
know,
It's
doesn't
such
it?
a
Choose love, choose love. But where did you first meet? Because this is obviously not your first time working together. Because Neve, I've seen you work with people for the first time, and you don't usually come for them like that.
I'm usually nicer to them, aren't I?
absolutely.
Do you know what? Ish has done a number of World Cups, 2 as a player, Ish, and how many as a pundit?
I think it's 2 as a pundit, but I've worked on them in production, and probably about 4 or 5 I've actually worked on, which again is showing my age. But yeah, we were the ultimate duo, weren't we, in France in 2019?
Well, we thought we were the ultimate duo.
Yeah, exactly,
I'm not sure
yeah.
people at home thought.
Yeah, so we travelled around following the Matildas until they got knocked out, and then continued on with the rest of the tournament. It was incredible. It was great, and
That is so cool.
looking forward to the World Cup
But
this year.
this
as well.
is exactly the sort of friendship that I think a lot of people are looking forward to taking place on our home shores as well.
Yes.
People meeting people who may have had through the online space, known each other through women's football,
Yeah.
but never actually met in person. The World Cup's going to be their meeting place for it, isn't it?
And it is remarkable. Like, as you travel around to the different cities, it is amazing how many different touring groups you run into, each from different parts of the world, but also for you as a former international, we were running into other former internationals everywhere. Each had a drinking buddy in every city that we visited.
It was a good party, wasn't it? It was like I don't think we really counted it as work, but it was an incredible experience, and it's just great sharing that experience when you've played on the pitch with people and then sharing it off the pitch. And most of the former Matildas, we all absolutely love getting behind the current team and seeing them do well. So it was awesome.
There is that Matildas alumni that 100% travels, whether it's tournaments within Australia or tournaments overseas. And you're right, we'll see that from travelling fans here in Australia and New Zealand across July and August. And I'm not sure the Aussie public yet knows quite what is coming. Like, the vibe is just incredible.
Yeah, you got to experience it firsthand in France. That is just so cool. I remember being overseas at that time and I couldn't get to a game, and I was so frustrated because I could see how electric and energetic it was, and it's just the kind of thing where you do get FOMO. And I'm warning you, if you're watching this and you haven't bought tickets yet, get tickets to the Women's World Cup, because you will experience that FOMO when the time comes if you've not done that.
It's going to be absolutely incredible, isn't it? We're a sports mad nation. We do major tournaments so well. I was lucky enough to play in the Sydney 2000 Olympics, and the experience that these Matildas are going to have on home soil, because you spend so much time away from your friends, your family, you miss weddings, you miss birthdays, and now they get to showcase the reasons they actually make those sacrifices in front of their home fans. So it's a pretty special moment, singing the national anthem on home soil.
And you got to experience that in the UK last year with the Euros, as did so many of our Tillies who play over there in England now. And I love those stories about the Matildas WhatsApp group absolutely lighting up when England managed to lift that trophy on home soil, about what was to come for them.
Yeah, it's the dream of every athlete. You want to win tournaments, you want to win trophies, and if you can do it on home soil, you've absolutely cracked it. And you don't get, it's a once in a career opportunity to play in a major tournament on home soil. So I know the girls are looking forward to it. Obviously a lot of pressure, so it's going to be important for them to block out the white noise, similar to what the Lionesses did. But I'm confident that crowds behind them, they'll get the energy and the vibes and want to do the country proud.
Are there things that the Matildas can learn from that Lioness Euros experience? Consistency of roster, for example. They really managed to maintain that same starting 11, that same core group of players throughout the tournament, which felt like it was so key to their success.
Yeah, and Serena Wiegman did that really well. There was the starting 11 and a few core substitutes, and she tended to make those substitutes at the same time. And as a player, you want consistency. You want consistency of your own performance. You also want to be rewarded for being consistent. And I think we've seen that a lot more in recent times with Tony and the Matildas as well. And I think that's important going into the World Cup. And look, I think we're actually getting to our best at the right time. And we're actually the dynamic, and we're gelling, and the tactics are coming together.
I love this tweet just now, basically responding to us doing the FOMO call out, saying that they've got their tickets, Matilda's in Melbourne, and then flying up to the final in Sydney. That's awesome. I'm jealous. I haven't even bought tickets to those exact fixtures, but
Is that you trying to get a gig online, putting your job out
yeah,
there?
I'm just throwing it out there, guys. I'm free. I'm free if you want me to go up to any of these games.
Have boots, can play. Free and available.
Teo, this game super important for Perth, but Adelaide looking to play spoiler as we head into the finals. They haven't had it all their own way this season. I think is probably an understatement from an Adelaide perspective. What can you see them doing in that final month of the season?
Look, it's kind of been, unfortunately, a bit of an Adelaide tradition in this league to be out of the finals contention and then have a dead cat bounce and tease everyone. No season, perhaps more famously than 2016-17, where they actually went undefeated against the entire top four in the finals 6 weeks of the season, albeit after they were out of finals themselves. They even cost Sydney the Premier's Plate by beating them 5-2 on the final day of the home and away season, meaning Canberra ended up with the trophy. So we know that they can play spoiler. The problem is that when they came into this season with the pressure of expectation, they haven't been able to live up to it. They did for the first 5 weeks at least, but after that, things went pear-shaped and the goals dried up, and well documented that they actually went a calendar year, without scoring 2 in a game. So to start this match off, they've controlled possession 63% actually through the first 10 minutes. So they've owned the ball. Perth Glory very much sitting in to hit on the counter-attack. Adelaide have not been able to turn that possession into anything meaningful, just the one shot off target at the moment. So this game certainly not setting the pulses racing. However, Jenna McCormick there with an errant pass has just got to go and recover the ball from Sierra Hinson there. So a mistake, perhaps never far away.
Ish, you were part of the commentary team on, I think, the first game of the season that Adelaide managed to score 2 goals in. What were your take-homes from that game? They found the back of the net a couple of times without perhaps creating a huge number of key opportunities.
Oh, great chance, sorry, Alicia,
No,
for
that's fine.
Adelaide here. Dylan Holmes, who scored the only goal last time the two teams played over in Perth, running into the box there and just firing it over the top of Morgan Aquino's goal. So second shot of the game here for Adelaide. We'll have another look here. It's just a great individual run. Holmes said, out of the way, clear a path for me. And then the finish just over the bar. It rose late, though. It looked pretty good off the boot.
Yeah, it was similar to the game I did when they played against Melbourne, and they were definitely on the counter-attack, and they did have some good opportunities to break open the Victory defence, but just some of their finishing wasn't clinical enough. And when you're not playing well and you're up against it, they're the chances that you really need to take, and they had a good couple of chances in that game. But, you know, they didn't look too far off the mark. It just seems, as Teo said, they've got a lot of injuries. Maybe a little bit of unrest wasn't there in the squad as well. So it's just the dynamic just quite isn't there. And towards the back end of the season, like you say, they're just playing for pride now.
Talk us through the run home, Teo, for both of these sides. Who is feeling better about their final month of Liberty A-League football, especially Perth, as they really push for that top 4 spot?
Yeah, quickly on Adelaide, they can only get to 26 points. So if they don't win today, they're more or less going to be mathematically eliminated. However, Perth Glory, you see there, Adelaide game today. The game against Wellington is away, so it's the distance derby. They've got to travel to Wellington for that. Melbourne City at home will be vital. City might well be going for second or possibly even first, depending if Sydney drop points or not, and also the outcome of the appeal. And then they've got Sydney FC in that game, which is the make-up for the match postponed earlier in the season, and then they finish with the Brisbane Roar at home. So the Sydney game is away, and then, the Brisbane game is away as well. So they are going to be racking up the frequent flyer points. Wellington, Sydney, Brisbane, and it's all coming in a compressed manner due to that Sydney game being a catch-up game. And given that you played for Brisbane in Queensland. You did a lot of flying and a lot of the hard work. It's not easy for Perth Glory. It's one thing to say you've got the games in hand. It's another thing to go and actually play them.
Especially when you're not a fan of hard work.
Yeah, exactly. The less work, better. It's always tricky for them. It's a long flight. You're sitting down for a long time, pressurised air, cabin air and stuff like that. So trying to keep the hydration up as well. It is a tough ask for them, and going all the way to Wellington, different time zones as well. It just messes up your whole pre-game routine, even the way you eat, and it's tough to get used to. I don't think you ever really get used to it as a player.
What was your policy and your approach when you did fly into Perth for games? I'm going to throw Nools under the bus here. I think it was Nools who told us that they'd arrive in Perth around midnight and she'd have a pizza.
Yeah, she did
pre-game.
say that.
That sounds like Nools. Nools have a pizza, some pizza and pasta from Nools. I think we flew in the day before. And then it was usually an early kickoff. That was the toughest thing in Perth, because if the game was being televised, we'd be kicking off at 12 p.m. I think a couple of times it was 38 degrees, and it's just difficult to get yourself very quickly, not just getting over the time difference, but also the flight, and then an early start, because you have a whole pre-match routine. Most players like to play either mid-afternoon or even in the evening, because do you have 2 meals before your 12 o'clock kickoff, or do you have a big meal and then a snack? So it was always a tricky one, and to be honest, one I never really looked forward to playing in. It was always, pretty tough.
What was the go-to meal? I
Go-to
always
meal?
like to ask this because pasta seems to come up a lot.
Don't give me pasta.
It's an obvious.
I'm past it out.
Okay, fair enough.
No. I always had to eat 3 hours before, and I always had to play on an empty stomach. So I used to keep it pretty light, cereal, toast, pretty bland stuff, pretty easy. But I wouldn't eat any closer to the game because it'd make me feel sick.
I actually heard something amazing on Pakua Frimpong's Radio Dub podcast this week. Nikki Flannery said that before 10:30 every match day, she likes to have a chocolate milkshake. And Pakua and Victory goalkeeper Miranda Templeman were doing the interview, and they were both horrified at the idea of a chocolate milkshake being the game day routine. They asked, how do you not spew it back up? And she said, no, it's part of the routine.
Settles the stomach, lines the stomach.
These traditions and these superstitions, is that one you'd ever heard before, though, chocolate milkshake?
I mean, it wouldn't be one that I'd choose, but then I guess if I'm saying cereal, then you've got some milk in it as well. It's anything that's easy to digest, and everyone's different. Everyone has a different metabolism. I always needed to keep it light. I've got the metabolism of a sloth, so, the less the better. But, there's some players that be eating right up until the game, smashing bananas in or protein bars and stuff like that. And at halftime, I always struggled to eat at halftime as well, or even with the protein gels, they always didn't quite sit in my stomach, but everyone's different.
Let's check in, Teo, with one of the other games we've got underway this afternoon. Sydney FC up against Wellington Phoenix. This one's at Netstrata Jubilee Stadium. We've had a tweet saying it's a gorgeous afternoon in Cogger, and they're absolutely loving the football out there. I think Sydney FC with a key chance early.
So here's a look at a corner kick from Mackenzie Hawkesby, dragged short, whipped into the box. Bit of a scramble to get the ball away. Shallow clearance, and that's a good save from Brianna Edwards. A deflected shot, which needed to be tipped over the bar. And now we go to live action here where Paige Satchell, who, let's not forget, scored the match-winning goal in the game which won the Premier's Plate for Sydney FC last season, now playing in the colours of Wellington Phoenix. There she is, the Kiwi international, trying to come back to haunt her former team. But that was a great early chance for Sydney FC. And I believe it was Deborah Andella Harp who had the shot on goal there and was tipped away. So hasn't scored in Sydney FC colours yet this season, just the one career goal. But Brianna Edwards, deputising for Lily Allfeld, who I understand probably won't get back to play at all this season, which is a real shame for her. Her number 2 has been thrown in for the entire campaign and has basically put her foot forward. She's a dual citizen, so wouldn't count as a foreign player for any of the other Australian clubs. She's probably putting her hand up to get a gig as a number 1 somewhere else next year.
How big is that, Ish, in this game for both the Knicks and Sydney FC? Two different keepers in goal to their norm. Katie Offer has played a number of games for the Sky Blues this season, but how big is that confidence in your keeper for a defensive unit?
You've got to have confidence in your whole squad as well, but it's sometimes the dynamic, the communication. That was a fantastic save by Brianna Edwards. It looked like it was a slight deflection as well, so she just tipped that over the bar. But you've got to go in confident. That's the keeper's game. Keepers are built on confidence. They have to be, and you have to always be ready. I mean, we always talk about it being such a tough position because you're thrown into the deep end straight away, aren't you? But made a great save.
Really, we just talk about them being a different breed. don't we?
Oh, they're definitely a different breed.
Kat
Yeah,
mentioned
absolutely.
France 2019 before.
Yeah.
Mark Schwarzer was on that tour with us as well. And Schwartzy, one of the good guys, will absolutely agree that you got to have a bit of a screw loose to be a goalkeeper.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to dive at people's feet and have balls kicked at you all day, you know, but it's a thankless task, but it's such a huge importance as well. But I think it's far more difficult being a backup keeper because you've got to be ready the whole time, you know. It's a tough gig.
Yeah,
But
which
we still give them
psychologically-
stick, don't they? We can't help it. We still give the goalkeeper stick.
But psychologically, that would be hard, being always ready there on the bench for the call-up during a game. I guess in this case, for Brie Edwards and for Katie Offer, at least they're starting, and they've known in the lead-up that they would be starting.
Yeah, and also different to being an outfield player, you don't really get a chance to work your way into the game. So your first touch might have to be a save like that. So you're under pressure from the first minute. If they're not necessarily playing out from the back, then you know your first piece of action is got to be important and you've got to make a save. So it's a tough gig and it's more of the mental game, you know, the technique and tactics and stuff like that, but you've got to stay switched on the whole time.
Like you said, when you're the second keeper, you don't know when that opportunity is going to come, when that game time comes, and it can be the silver lining when there is an injury or a setback for that first keeper. But it's that pressure of what does that game time look like? What are the conditions like? And under what conditions do you end up being thrown into those goals? It could be, you know, in the 90th minute of a random game, and
or a penalty shootout.
Yeah.
We actually in the Asian Cup in 2006, annoyingly, China, we got to the extra time and China changed their goalkeeper for the penalty shootout, and we subsequently missed two of our best penalty takers, Colette McCallum, Joey Peters, both missed their penalties. They brought on this 6-foot giant just for the penalties, and it definitely played on our minds, and we didn't win the game.
So was that a keeper that they had specifically for penalties
Well,
because
look,
they had
she
such
was-
a presence in the...
Yeah, she was their second keeper, and clearly when it looked like it was going to penalties, then...
Sorry, Wellington are in here. The cutback from Paige Satchel and defended and turned away. They didn't have a player to go to there, but Wellington's starting to build. Oh, look who it is, Kirsty Fenton. But Betsy Hassett there was advancing through the middle of the pitch. Great pass from Satchel to release Emma Ralston, another former Sydney FC player. Here's the return ball. And Mr. Freeze is, no, we're going to miss the replay there, but it was turned away by the defenders, take my word for it. I can also say that due to a technical issue and the big wire cables in the sky not being connected, we don't have footage, but I can tell you that Shay Connors has scored for the Brisbane Roar, and Western United are in big, big trouble because they are potentially going to leave the door ajar for Melbourne City to catch them for second spot as things stand. Shay Connors is on a scoring streak at the moment. I believe that is 4 in 5 for her, but it means that it's Brisbane Roar 1, leading Western United 0, and we will do our best to bring you that goal. If you do want to watch that game in isolation, it is on 10 Play.
Go the Roar.
We'll actually just need you to say that, just at regular intervals
Go the
throughout
Roar.
the afternoon until we
Come
manage
on,
to get the
Brisbane.
feed up.
Come on.
And you can be Western United and just say something similar, Kat, because you're
Pulled
dressed
up in the
appropriately.
green. I know, I've done it to myself, haven't
Yeah,
I?
you've given Mark Torcaso a pump up this afternoon, so we can just cover the game with the occasional come on,
Look,
Raw. Go
There
Western.
has, I will admit that I have been following Western United pretty closely. I mean, what an inaugural season. What a way to kick off their A-League journey. It's incredible. But speaking of incredible things today, we are seeing a few tweets about Larissa Crummer's 100th game, but Teo, clarify it for us. Is it her 100th today, or is that happened already?
It's Brisbane Roar back at home to say well done to Larissa Crummer because her 100th game was against Perth 2 weeks ago, and she missed the trip to Wellington. So today is game number 101, 27 career goals, 3 in 13 this season as well, and still only 27 years old, Larissa Crummer, so plenty of football ahead of her. And someone who, a bit like Courtney Vine, has resisted the urge to go overseas, played for Kapalova. I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Go Kapalova.
Yeah, no,
it's
the
definitely not
Queenslanders-
Kapalava.
Yeah, well, they absolutely, they roasted me when I said Kapalava.
Did you? Oh, no.
Played in the NPL over the winter, and I mean, like Princess Sabini, who played for RPA Leichhardt, Courtney Vine, who played for Sydney Olympic, there are some players either in the Matildas or on the fringe of the Matildas that kind of didn't want to make that move. It wasn't the right time in their life. We know that Larissa Crummer is a trained tradie, I believe, and that is her day job in addition to football, and didn't really want to walk away from that. So I think that, it's a great story that she's reached 100 games, because I was there in Adelaide the day that she broke her leg in the collision with Sarah Willisey, now Sarah Langman. And it was one of those situations where the ambulance was thankfully at the ground, treated on the field, had to take her away, and it was months and months and months of surgeries and rehabilitation just to walk again, never mind play football.
Oh no, she's done incredibly well to get to 100 games under those circumstances. And you can understand Larissa's probably just trying to get back and to enjoy her football and to stay fit and healthy as well, because I remember that challenge as well, and it was absolutely horrible. And it was a good time that she actually got back on the field. And it's not just that, it's then everything else that happens as well. You know, any of those major injuries, I've done both my cruciates. It's not just the time out of the game, you know, everything your biomechanics change a little bit. So then you get a calf strain, so then you get a hamstring strain. It's like all the little tinkering things as well that go along with it. And it takes a good couple of years to get back to your best.
While we see a little drinks break here at Netstrata Jubilee Stadium, let's check in with one of our interviews for this afternoon, and that's with Tom Samani, an absolute legend of the coaching game. He's a former Matildas coach, former coach of the US women's national team. He's now involved with the Canada setup and indeed the Western Sydney Wanderers here in the Liberty A-League as well. Tommy, it is always good to chat with you. Thank you so much for joining us on Dub Zone.
Oh, thanks, Dave. I really appreciate the invitation.
Well, Ish is just bringing all of her friends along this afternoon, so we're looking forward to hearing from you some stories about Alicia Ferguson and her playing days, remembering, of course, the time slot that we're on this afternoon. But, Tommy, can I ask you to begin with about the current state of affairs in international women's football? Because it feels like for every week or so of the last few months, we've heard about a different national side and issues within, whether it's their federation, whether it's with the coach, and it's players really speaking out about what they're experiencing within those national setups. You've experienced that from the other side of things as a head coach yourself. Does it feel like we're seeing more players speaking out about their experiences today, or is it just a case that we can hear more? They've got more avenues to actually express themselves now.
I think it's probably a combination, but I think it's, you know, with the profile of the game being raised from what it used to be, so players' voices are now, you know, making headlines. I think it's players reaching the stage where they're beginning to stand up for the rights and be outspoken, which has really not been the case in the women's game, other than perhaps the US women's national team. So I think it's a combination of that, and I think, you know, within it depends, different things with different circumstances. I think it's a situation now where players are refusing to put up with a certain type of coach who might be verbally intimidating or using power to be inappropriate. And it's also at the other end of the scale. We're in a world now of, you know, first world players where they'll perhaps tend to get upset at things that wouldn't have come on the radar a few years ago. And so it's a combination of all of those things.
Do you think we're seeing players have different expectations of what that coaching, what that training environment looks like? And are we seeing coaches having to evolve as a result?
100%. And actually, as Ish would probably tell you, I usually just bluff my way on things, but I did a little bit of background work on this. And I think it's a combination. As I say, I think at the two extreme ends, you've got the kind of coach that we need to get out the game, the abusive coach. And then at the other end, you've got players who will get upset, you know, if they, get the merest of criticisms. I think that the key thing is somewhere in between where, the important thing, and I think women's football is different to men's football. So I think there's a situation now where as coaches, we can no longer be sort of non-listening or non-hearing or non-understanding. So I think there has to be a difference in the skills of communicating and awareness and insight. And I think that should come about through coach education, because the reality is now you have to be much more aware of what you say to people, how you communicate with people, and what the expectations of people are now around the different jobs. And coaches have to evolve with that as well.
Tommy, Ish here. I'd just like to say thanks for interrupting your afternoon nap to come on and have a chat to us. I know it's a big ask, so I appreciate that.
Huge ask, by the way. Huge ask.
I can see you need toothpicks in your eyes. We were chatting about it during the week, and you're now involved in the Canada setup with Bev Priestman. Just explain, what was the camp like at the She Believes Cup when all that stuff was ongoing? Because it's difficult for the players. Like players don't naturally just want to cause a kerfuffle, do they?
Not really, no. And the Canadian players are not confrontational at all. And it was a slightly different issue with the Canadian players. So it wasn't around the coaching, it wasn't around the management or anything within the team structure. And it wasn't about looking for more money. It was actually about the money for the whole programme being cut leading into the World Cup and an Olympic year, which would impact not just the senior team, but also the youth teams, which have to qualify for World Cups later this year as well. So it was about their actual disagreement was actually about the programme being cut and them being able to deliver. You know, that they've got pressure to deliver a world-class team, but then the programme's getting cut to a working-class programme. So that's where they had the dispute. And like I say, Canadians are a really great group of players who got on really well together and very non-confrontational. So having to deal with this dispute within the bounds of the camp was very, very distracting for them, and certainly it impacted the whole camp and impacted our performances.
It's really good insight to hear all of this from you, but let's take it local. Obviously, you're working with Western Sydney Wanderers. What's the plan over the next 12 months, let's say, with that team and the work that you're doing as Director of Football to make changes within that club? What does that look like for you at the moment?
Well, I think the club have made a big effort in the women's space to do better than what they had done before. You know, if you'd spoken before to the people involved in the women's part of the club, they felt a little bit isolated. So the club has made a real effort now to raise the standard and the profile of its women's team. So there's a couple of things we want to do. One is we want to win games in the W League. That's a priority. Sign players. But also make players aware of the actual setup and structure that we've got at West Sydney, which is absolutely first class. So that's on one hand. The second hand is we want to build up an academy. We actually want a replica of the men's academy. So we'll have a men's academy and a women's and girls academy, and we'll start to produce players from the west of Sydney. I mean, it's such a fertile area for football, and it's such an ethnically diverse area that it's a really fantastic place to actually do this. And the club, as I say, want to build up both of the programmes. And if you look at the setup and the structure that we've got out there, it's really world class. So those are some of the things that we're trying to do at the club. And you know, putting Kat Smith in place as the head coach was one of the building blocks, and she's done a terrific job this year to sort of turn the team around and make us more competitive.
Kat joined us on Dub Zone a couple of weeks ago and she was super impressive. Tommy, I was very happy to hear you say before that you'd done a little bit of prep in the lead up to this interview, because do you know what? We did some background on you as well. And we spoke to Sarah Gregorius, one of the former New Zealand internationals, now a big hitter with FIFA Pro. And this is a little insight into one of the anecdotes she had for us from your time as head coach of New Zealand.
This has got trouble written all over it.
In it that he is sipping from as he walks into the dressing room. So we came in at halftime and we were a few goals up, which was good, but it was pretty warm. And so usually what happens is you go in as players and you have a few moments to yourselves, and then the coaching staff walk in. And so in walks Tom, and he has got a coconut in his hand with a straw in it that he is sipping from as he walks into the dressing room. So we're all just a bit like, okay. And he's just carrying on with his halftime talk as if this is a totally normal occurrence. And so in one hand he's got a coconut with a straw, a brightly coloured straw coming out of it, and then in the other hand he's like pointing at the tactics board, like trying to tell us what we need to work on, the different subs that are going to be made. And he does his speech, takes a big slurp from his coconut and wanders back out of the dressing room.
Do you actually believe I'd do something like that?
I do.
Do you know what? I 100%
do.
do. I've seen you there in France, except in this occasion, Tommy, you had a cup of tea there on the sideline as opposed to a coconut. Is that just you need a prop?
Yeah, you probably need something in your hands. I've got a bit of a Scottish Italian background, so the hands get waved about a lot, so it's probably a good thing for me having something there to stabilise them. But it's interesting, Sarah Gregorius, because you can't get hold of her now. She's such a big timer.
When it's about you, Tommy, she can.
Yeah.
Tommy, heading into this World Cup, you've experienced a number of them before. This one here in Australia and the Matildas and Canada, of course, in the same group. How are you feeling in the lead up to this tournament, and what can Aussie football fans expect from the World Cup experience?
Well, I think they'll see stuff that they haven't seen before. You know, we've had the Asian Cup here with the men, but obviously, and we've had our Youth World Cup way back in the early 90s, which was fantastic back in those days. But I think, you know, the colour, the fans, the diversity of the teams, all of that stuff that's going to come into town, just going to be fantastic. And then there's the football side, and I think, you know, I thought at the Olympics in 2021 was the first women's tournament that I've been to where there was genuinely multiple possible winners. And I think when you come into this World Cup, there's probably 6 teams at least have a chance of winning it. So you've got a really high-level competitive competition, lots of colour, lots of different cultures, and I just think a great spectacle.
Topping the group's going to be pretty important, isn't it, for both Canada and Australia, with England looming large in the round of 16?
Well, it appears that way, you know, and it's one of those things you can never quite, you plan for all these things and then you never know what happens. I think, you know, and I'm very happily not the head coach, let me say, but, you know, if I was the head coach, the first priority is to get through the group. I think I think both host countries, New Zealand and Australia, have actually drawn very tough groups. Normally, the host country gets a little bit of leeway and gets a weaker team in the group, but both countries have actually got very tough groups, and there's no easy games in our group. So, from my perspective, all I would be focusing on from Canada is to make sure we qualify.
Tom Samani, it is always brilliant to hear your insights. Thank you so much for joining us on Dub Zone.
Thank you, Neve. It's a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
The great Tom Samani, one of the coaches, Ish, in world football, who you cannot talk to you can't find a bad word about. Anyone you speak to has a really good yarn and a smile when they talk about Tom Samani.
Yeah, he is one of the good guys, and he's been around for so long, has so much experience, and he was my favourite coach, and I think I probably could speak on behalf of our squad during that time. It was probably the happiest that we were. He treated us as adults. It was a very open dialogue and communication, and everyone knew their roles and responsibilities within the team, and Tommy always had an open door policy. And I think we overachieved and we did great. It was the first time we qualified for a World Cup through Asia at the Asian Cup in 2006, and that was a lot down to Tommy.
It's really nice to hear that he's still in the game.
He should be still in the house to still be in the game, you know.
And local too.
Absolutely. Look, Tommy is football through and through. And just to say that, you know, everyone knows Tommy. He knows everyone. He just doesn't know their names. He has a worse memory than I do. So he's constantly like, Eesh, what's her name? I'm like, I don't know. But he is. He's so down to earth. He's so friendly. But he knows the game so well. He doesn't overcomplicate it because, you know, I think there can sometimes be a tendency these days. You know, there's so much detail. It's always the little 1%. There's so much detail. But Tommy still reads the game very well, and he's adapted and developed and continued, you know, his development journey as a coach, and that's why he's still involved.
And Teo, while we were talking to Tom Samani, we had a goal at Netstrata Jubilee Stadium, and perhaps not from the side we would have anticipated scoring first.
No, but Wellington Phoenix have one really significant weapon, and it is this player right here, Michaela Foster. Her set-piece delivery is single-handedly forcing the New Zealand team to rethink who they're calling up to their World Cup squad. This corner, Katie Offer bats it in the air, and it's the centre-back, Kate Taylor, with a left-footed volley through the traffic. Just her second A-League women's goal. First of the season. She's had an injury hit campaign as well, Kate Taylor. So this is a great moment for her. Another player that's really pushing to make that final New Zealand World Cup squad. Really read that well out of the air, volleying in to make it 1-0. Sydney FC with Courtney Vine on the attack straight away to try and get an instant response. And off the back of their win against Western United last week, Sarah Hunter there fires over the bar. And so that was Sydney's best chance at an equaliser since, but as things stand, they've had 3 shots, just the one on target, and Wellington have scored from their one and only shot on target so far.
Well, I always say in women's football as well, I think, you know, set pieces are crucial. And for a team like Wellington, yeah, as you say, the delivery was fantastic in there. But okay, that's not an easy skill because the ball was kind of coming back and around. She was already kind of half facing back towards her own goal. So cracking volley there. I was looking to see if she had a bit of a nosebleed, but it's a corner, so she should be that far up.
There's some comments here saying that the Phoenix have really come to play, and it is really nice to see them hit that score sheet before Sydney, which we may not have expected, but why not?
Well, it's vital for them in terms of avoiding the wooden spoon, because in their first campaign, they did end up with the wooden spoon on goal difference only behind the Western Sydney Wanderers. This campaign, they've got 6 points on the live table. This would move them up to 9 points. Newcastle on 10 points, and Wellington with a considerably better goal difference. They're only -10. Newcastle are -28. So if they do finish up level at the end of the season, it'll be Wellington this time who avoid the wooden spoon. Newcastle, their remaining games, away to Adelaide, Wellington in Newcastle, that'll be the game that decides it, and then away to Sydney FC to finish the season. So you would suspect that Newcastle, probably at best maybe getting to 13, Wellington would be on 9 if they can hold on today, but there's a long, long way to go, and their defence hasn't been fantastic this season. So if they keep a clean sheet today, it would be a really huge effort. Even getting towards half-time would be a huge effort. The one thing that pains me a little about this scoreline, Neve, is that Sydney will actually need to really go and contest that appeal for the Canberra result if they drop today. If they were winning the league by 4 points come the end of the home and away season, who cares if they get another 3 off Canberra? They can give them back. Now it might be lawyers at 10 paces.
That's such an interesting perspective, Teo. Do you genuinely think Sydney FC will go in and fight hard for those 3 points?
People's minds get changed every time the ball hits the back of the net, Neve. So maybe, I think really the best case scenario would have been Canberra makes the finals by a 4-point margin. Sydney FC wins the league by a 4-point margin. The appeals are relevant.
Yeah.
I don't think we're heading for that.
From a player's perspective, Ish, for both Sydney FC players and for Canberra United players, how much do you have to just ignore it and play what's in front of you? And how engaged are you with the discussion and with the fight that's underway?
I mean, I've spoken to a Canberra United player who's pretty cranky about it, and of course you feel hard done by, whether it's, and as players, of course, we love a good whinge and stuff like that, and it does seem quite harsh, but this is what it is to be a professional footballer as well. It's the fine margins in those games, and they'll be absolutely gutted.
Do you feel a bit shortchanged though when you don't know if the table is the table? I mean, one of my pet hates coming from NPLs is points deductions happen quite frequently, and you look through the record books, you look at the table as it's in front of you, you see the win-loss draw, and the mathematics doesn't add up because there's been a deduction. It is one of my pet hates in football, to be honest.
Yeah, I think as a player, you don't tend to take too much notice of it, unless all you look at, it's a 1 day in advance, basically, as a player. What's the next game? What do we need to do? And I think it's either whatever your goals are, whether it's to win the league or to get into the top 4 to qualify for the finals. You can't ever think that too far ahead or actually get too caught up in it because you've got a job to do.
Well, speaking of those sides and indeed that top of the table battle, Teo, we're having some trouble with our feed to that Brisbane Roar Western United game, but we can celebrate a goal. Ish has demanded that Brisbane's goal be shown, and this is how it played out.
Yeah, the carrier pigeon's taken the USB stick all the way down from Perry Park and plugged it in here to Dub Zone, and now we can see how the Brisbane Roar open the scoring. Ball from deep from Katrina Gorry. Shay Connors, a little bit too quick there for Sydney Cummings, and that's a good finish into the corner. Shay Connors has scored some really good goals this season, and that is a precise finish. And the assist for Katrina Gorry. Sydney Cummings won't be happy with how Shay Connors was able to breeze past there, and nothing that the Player of the Month, Hilary Beale, could do about that.
I mean, that's like textbook mini, isn't it, Katrina Gorry? Like those lovely long balls deep into the runs of their strikers. And it's great to see her back on the pitch. I know towards the end of last year, Minnie having a young daughter, Harper, and the rigours of being a full-time professional, moving to Sweden, she was starting to feel the levels of fatigue, but she just keeps going and going. Like, she's an absolute extraordinary human.
Coming into today, Brisbane Roar had dropped 4 points to the Wellington Phoenix. So Phoenix had 6 points for the season. 2 of them were from drawing with the Brisbane Roar. Brisbane Roar takes care of business in those 2 games. They're on 21 points. They're right there, jumping into the finals with a win today. I mean, I know they didn't have Gorry or Crummer for the trip across the ditch last week, but they've not got the job done against the current wooden spoon team. The bottom team is what's costing them a far better shot at the finals at the moment. It must be frustrating for them.
Yeah, but is that also just saying that the depth of the league is quite good? Even though maybe the points and maybe there's been some marginal results not going their way, and that's what you want. You want every game to be competitive, don't you? And
I mean, for the most part, it has been. It's
Yeah.
really more that it's specifically raw, specifically against
What
Wellington.
is with all this Queensland hate feeling in this studio? What's going on? I mean, come on, go
I'm
the
just
Raw.
surprised you didn't wear your old Brisbane Raw jersey in today.
I'm not sure
actually.
it'd
Your
fit me,
jersey
though, to be
collection's
fair.
impressive.
Yeah, well, I did see my photo up there of probably one of my only goals scored in the first season of the W League, which is why I'm celebrating so much there. I didn't really score too many.
Just on the game generally, Brisbane Roar 7 shots, 2 on target. Western United 6 shots, 3 on target, 60% possession. And we know that they're a team that actually doesn't like to be the ball dominant team. They prefer to hit on the counter attack, but they've conceded to a long ball counter attack here. So Brisbane, credit to Gareth McPherson, seems to be beating Western United at their own game at the moment. There you go. I said something nice about the Brisbane
Thanks,
Roar.
Teo. Go on the Raw. Come on, girls.
Minnie and Shay Connors are good mates each, and you could see that real knowledge and trust that Shay was going to be exactly where Minnie, Katrina Gorry, expected her to be in that moment. Is that those relationships between players, knowing and understanding your teammate and knowing where they will run and when they'll do it? How crucial is that?
Yeah, it's absolutely crucial. I was lucky enough, Lisa Devanna, with her pace when we played in the Matildas team, anytime a ball would come back, I could just dink it into pockets of space and she would be, peeling off the shoulder of the defenders. And it's great to have that. You only need 1 or 2 touches to actually get the ball into those attackers and then you leave the rest to them and then you just stand and celebrate when they score.
We've spoken about Katrina Gorry and Louisa Crummer throughout the game today. We've had those absolute stalwart Brisbane players, Brisbane through and through over the years. Elise Keller-Knight, another one who's no longer in a Raw jersey, and for a long period of time you could kind of never imagine her in any jersey but a Brisbane Raw jersey. The players that they produce there are remarkable.
It's all turning around now, isn't it? You're all being really complimentary.
Mate,
I've got into your heads.
Take it.
The mental game is. Yeah, we've got a fantastic. I know the Raw are now back at the QSAC facility. That's where when I was with the Queensland Academy of Sport and with the Raw, it's an amazing facility. The pitch is incredible, and that's what makes the great players on game day. You need the training environment to be spot on. So you want the best facilities possible to give you the best opportunity to succeed, and that's definitely what they do have in Brisbane.
Keep using that hashtag DubZone, and we'll check in with Kat again in a moment's time to find out what has been happening across socials. But I'm loving all of those comments that are coming in. Teo, approaching half time. We've got 3 games underway. We continue to work on that feed from the Brisbane Raw Western United game, but it is the Perth Adelaide game, the only one that remains scoreless as we approach half time.
It does, and chances have been at a premium. Sophia Sakalis with a little improvised volley that went just wide. Maybe Perth's best chance to score so far. 7 shots, just the 1 on target. For Adelaide, 3 shots, just the 1 on target. For Perth, both teams under 0.3 XG, so nothing clear-cut or really fantastic for them to score. Possession pretty even. Adelaide still at 55%. It's only 25 degrees in Adelaide, so it's not like this game it has a reason to be going at snail's pace. You see the wind is quite strong. You mentioned the grass at Service FM Stadium is quite lush, maybe affecting the ball speed of both teams as well. And a strong wind, always difficult to play in. But at the moment, Perth haven't really made the most of having it at their backs. What I'll be interested in is how Adelaide run out the game, because Canberra did finish quite strongly over the top of them last week in that 4-2 win. So I suspect that Perth might have the legs on them here. But at the moment, this game probably, based on what's been created, deserves to be 0-0 at halftime.
How crucial is that lead at the break as a player heading into half-time? Especially we so often see goals in those final minutes before a half-time break. How crucial is it?
Yeah, it's important, isn't it? You go in positive, and usually the coach has nicer things to say, and you might not get yelled at, which is always positive as well. But it's just confidence, and it's building on the momentum. I think football's all about momentum, isn't it? It's whether you continue building on that momentum or the momentum changes during the game.
Wanted to just ask you a question about Sydney FC. They continue to trail. Wellington have got another corner coming up here. We're seeing on one of our monitors, which means Foster's going to loom large and be dangerous again. There she is, the set-piece specialist, perhaps the deadliest left foot in the league at the moment. But Sydney have played to the occasion this year. They smashed Melbourne City 3-0. They beat Western United 3-0. They have won 8-3 across their 2 games against Melbourne Victory. Against the current top 4, they have been absolutely the best team in the league, lay down misère. The problem is they play down to their opposition. and they're playing down to the wooden spoon team today. You see them running off. They know that Ante Juric has probably got something ready for them to say at halftime. But how do you get into that mind? And this is probably what led to us maybe questioning Courtney Vine's form before that international break, because again, she plays the occasion. She's been ripper against the top teams, but has not been brilliant against the lower teams. And how do you make sure that you're a bit more consistent and you don't get sucked into being, dragged into the occasion, but also needing that heightened level of emotion or the pressure of a game against a title contender in order to find your best?
I think, again, it's just consistency. And I think as a player, and the more you mature as a player, you become more consistent because you just focus on the process. So the process every single game, no matter what opposition you're coming up against, has to be exactly the same. And maybe it's a mental side of it where, yeah, of course, they're potentially a little bit complacent towards the lower teams. But I think that does come with time. And sometimes you just need, it doesn't seem like, you're looking for other players, but if your whole team is just a level lower, then you really need to try and G them up. How
much of that is players' responsibility versus the coaching staff's responsibility and how they prepare the team for the game?
It's players' responsibility. We're professional players. It's personal responsibility, and you need to take that responsibility on board and take it seriously. And you need to understand how you prepare best to perform on the day. But sometimes teams, it's hard to get up for every single game. It's emotionally taxing to get up for every single game. So there can be times against lesser opposition where it's a subconscious thing rather than a conscious thing.
I think this is one of the things that not to name drop a different podcast, but on the Gegen pod, Michael Zullo came on during the World Cup and talked about what Graham Arnold would do as the Sydney FC coach, because I said in a tournament environment, we know that he's a specialist at getting the Socceroos to rise to the occasion and peak for the moment, as they absolutely did in Qatar. But as the Sydney FC coach, how did he do it every single week in order of leaning into very much the emotion and also the motivation and the desire of the players? And coaches have to have a really deep repertoire of what they do. And the best thing that Michael Zullo dropped was whenever they played Melbourne Victory, Graham Arnold would edit the club crest to take the word victory off, and he would put up the blue V and the word Melbourne, but he would never, ever say the word victory, and he refused to ever use that word with regards to the club. And I thought, it's fascinating, but it means the coaches have to have a pretty deep reservoir of things to go to in order to mentally and emotionally get the players engaged every week of a long season.
Yeah, and it depends, if everything's going well, it's really easy to do that. Talking about, say, the Premier League with Liverpool when they were on, and you tend to see when things are going really well, it's really effortless. You feel like you can run for an extra 90 minutes on top of the current 90. You find that there's not as many injuries, not as many soft tissue injuries, I find. You've got a healthy squad, and that's because players are playing like relaxed. When everything's going well and you've got a good dynamic within the team, it all seems easy, and that's easier to keep that momentum going anyway.
I love that language insight as well. Arnie's big on it. Language matters, the words you use matter, and he insists upon it right across, whether it was Sydney FC or indeed the Socceroos as well. Such an interesting insight. All right, time for a quick break here at halftime on Dub Zone. We'll be back with highlights from all three games on the other side, but as we head to the break, let's celebrate our Liberty A-League goal of the week.
Diagonal, looking for Flannery. Wonderful touch from Nikki Flannery. She'll launch it into the back post. Heyman! Michelle Heyman does it again! A diving header from Michelle Heyman restores Canberra's 2-goal advantage. And that is what Canberra United can do.
The flag stays down. Brodigan is in again. It's a one-on-one finish. This to make it 3. And it falls off the line. Cummings gets it away. So close for Brodigan. Beale makes the save.
She's played it out to Henry. He's got space ahead of her. Briley Henry tried to beat Beale, who's away to it. Great save.
Emily Roach slides it one more on. It's Gooch. Good save by Beale.
Bliss's played that forward into space for Grosso. And great goalkeeping from Hilary Beale to come out early for that. Fong Song Cam takes a strike there and a great save from Hilary Beale.
This is my junior club. Community is exactly, you know, what we're about. And I think, you know, you can never be too big to come and help back where it all started. It's really hard to work out what the size of an under-9 is. This is, you know, the gear for our under-10s, under-8s, under-9s. It's a never-ending cycle of getting the gear and making sure everyone's got what they need. This is where your Socceroos are born, your Matildas are born, as well as players who don't end up amounting to anything. They're playing in the same team because at this age and level, there isn't such a difference. And the more I can help out, the better it's going to be for this club and for the future A-League stars.
Welcome back to Dub Zone. A-League's All Access. It's there on the Keep Up app. It's been an absolute revelation this season. And Grace Maher, how likeable as a human is she?
She's just so sweet, and you can see that role that she plays within the club. She made a carrot cake for Rochi's birthday. She said she's made multiple cakes this season for respective birthdays and celebrations within the team. Ish, just how important are those little things to make a team feel together?
Yeah, you spend more time with your teammates than you do your family, really. So it's crucially important, and it's a nice place to be. You know, when you're in a squad of 25 different personalities, there can be some challenges sometimes. So when you've got a real team atmosphere and it's all harmonious, they're the good moments.
Yeah.
I was so sure you were going to ask Ish
If I
what
could
the
bake a
cameras
cake.
would have discovered
Oh.
if they'd followed Ish around for A-League's All Access back in her day. Ish, the ultimate professional, how would that have gone?
Yeah, really well, actually. I mean, I actually worked at the Queensland Academy of Sport, so I would train in the morning at the gym, work, go upstairs, and then be back on the pitch in the afternoon. So, I mean, I had the perfect setup. I lived 5
Living and
minutes from
breathing.
it was brilliant.
Wow.
Mate, I've never seen you do a day's work in your life, so I find that very hard to believe. Teo, let's have a look back at the highlights from the first half. We'll start with Sydney-Wellington, shall we? Because it is the Knicks with the lead at halftime.
And extraordinarily, we could be heading for the second time this season that last place has beaten first place. It happened when the Wanderers beat Western United earlier in the campaign. We see this save from Brianna Edwards from Deborah Ann Delaharp was able to deny Sydney FC the lead. And then the build-up play here from Emma Ralston and Paige Satchel, a couple of aspiring New Zealand national team players. Satchel more likely, you'd think, to make the squad than Ralston at this point, and that was turned away by the Sydney defence. However, look at the space between the midfield and the defence that's being afforded this week, and that drew a very good save from Katie Offer. Not this occasion, though. Offer got up to the ball, but Kate Taylor volleying in for the 1-0 lead. And Nat Tobin, who played as the number 6 last week, the defensive midfielder, got sent off, a red card that was pretty controversial in the end. 2 yellows, so you can't appeal 2 yellows. You just got to take your medicine and take the week off, and it was Nat Tobin's second red card of the season too. But just from these highlights alone, Ish, we are seeing the gap between the midfield and defence is pretty big. Wellington have got pacey players that are exploiting it, and even though, you know, the likes of Sarah Hunter are out there, I think no Shea Holman, who's away on young Matilda's duty. They actually had a 7-0 win overnight against Kyrgyzstan, but perhaps their first 2 choice defensive midfielders in that number 6 role aren't there, and maybe Ante Juric's team talk at halftime is going to be designed around how they close that gap and stop Wellington running at their defence with so much freedom.
Absolutely, and I think conversely on the flip side, getting players around the ball so they can actually build up play. Rather, it's quite a transitional game there. There's huge gaps. There's plenty of space out wide as well. Neither team are really seeming to exploit those wide areas, so definitely room for improvement.
If you're Wellington, you're playing to avoid the wooden spoon. 8 shots, 2 on target, only 0.43 XG, but they've almost had 60% of possession. They would not have been expecting that coming into this game today. How do they make sure that they don't get too excited and don't get too carried away in the moment? Because they're still very much a young team. It's up to the likes of Betsy Hassett and Paige Satchel to provide the leadership out there, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's just making sure that you stay nice and compact and don't give. Sydney have had a couple of opportunities, shots on goal, that they haven't got on target as well. So they've got that pace in Courtney Vine in those wide areas. Just got to close down those gaps because there's a lot of space out there.
So, hey, it makes for an exciting second half because as Sydney chase the game, that'll leave them vulnerable to the counter-attack.
Both teams chasing the game in terms of Adelaide's clash with Perth. Let's have a look at the highlights from the first half of that one, Teo. No goals, and it's Perth who are absolutely sweating on a result. They want 3 points out of this one.
Yeah, they've really hit a bit of a goal drought at the worst possible time. We see here Adelaide with Dylan Holmes weaving through the midfield. She did this a couple of times in the half, but that was the best of the shots for Adelaide. 7 attempts, just the one on target, though. Perth, 4 attempts, just the one on target. Adelaide with 57% of possession. We see there a good save. That was Mariska Walters drawing the save there out of her own goalkeeper. It would have been an own goal. And then we see this attempt here hit the top of the net. I believe that was Fiona Wirtz. And then Perth here marauding through the right side, but not able to actually get the shot on goal. I mentioned the improvised volley from Sophia Sakalis. Was trying to channel Zlatan there with a little back heel attempt, a little half scorpion kick. Out that went, and then that header from Sierra Hinson. A much better chance than it looks. Always hard to steer that sort of a header on the target. Hannah Lowry, she won the Young Player of the Month during the week, and that chance went just wide as well. So Perth with the better of the opportunities, but very few of them on target, Ish. The one save there drawn from Annalie Grove, Adelaide's own keeper, from her own defender. Perth shooting hasn't been able to actually really test the goalkeeper, but based on those highlights alone, they look as though they are getting closer and closer to a goal.
Yeah, there's plenty of chances, aren't there? It's just making sure they're being more clinical and maybe taking that extra half a second to actually make sure that they get those shots on target and test the keeper. But it's been an entertaining match.
And Hannah Lowry won the Young Player of the Month. I will admit, I vote for the award. It's a 3-2-1. Hannah Lowry may not have snuck into my 3-2 or 1 for the month. So I'll openly declare I voted for Millie Clegg. I gave her the 3. I thought she had a fantastic month for the Wellington Phoenix. But a fantastic young player for Perth. Did catch the attention with a couple of goals against the Brisbane Roar. And it's exciting for the Glory because they don't have a lot of current Matildas, but they have a lot of players that after the World Cup, after the Paris Olympics in 2024, they've kind of got the next generation waiting there to come in and really contend for senior Matilda spots.
I think that's so important, isn't it, for a club to have that young talent coming through. It's a generational sport at the end of the day, and you see girls get older, get more experienced, and you see the game change because of that. And as someone who's grown up with the game from kind of watching the men's, seeing the evolution of women's football, and I'm very fortunate, to watch you play and then also sit next to you today. It's awesome. I'm fangirling. I've been hiding it the entire time, but totally fangirling. But it's exactly why it's so important to see that young talent coming through, because it shows that the club's doing the right thing and they're supporting that young talent and providing opportunity.
And I'll tell you something, so it was towards the end of my career, and it was 2 young players from the Gold Coast, Tamika Yallop, who was back then, and Elise Keller-Knight. And I remember turning to our captain, Kate McShay, Shorty, and we were doing a 2v2 exercise, and we stopped, and I turned to Shorty and went, I think it's time for me to retire because this is the future. These incredibly young, talented players zipping around and physically and technically just at the top of their game, and the youthful enthusiasm. And it was fantastic to have them around the squad as well. Seeing the development of those players now playing in the Matildas, it was a privilege.
2 pretty reasonable players as well.
Absolutely. They ran rings around us. I'll put this up for Shorty. Shorty, I'm sure you remember it, but we were just like, we've got no chance of getting anywhere near them. It's time. Well, for me particularly, Shorty continued playing on for another couple of years, but I was like,
oranges.
Take it on, girls. It's all yours. Go for it.
That's so cool.
We've got a really big game coming up on Monday in Melbourne. It is the Melbourne Derby. Melbourne Victory up against Melbourne City, a doubleheader at Amy Park. And Claudia Bunge from Melbourne Victory has been good enough to join us on Dove Zone today. Claudia, always good to see you. And this is always a big game, but as we count down to finals, does it feel like that race for the top 4 adds even more spice to this derby?
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, the race for the top 4 is pretty tight and every game matters. And with it also being a derby, the girls are really up for it.
Is your side looking at it, and have you spoken about it as a pretty simple equation? Keep winning and you play finals football.
Yeah, exactly. We've been talking about that, and Jeff's been saying, as long as we get the 3 points each game, we're kind of in charge of our own fate. So, nothing changes for us. We're looking to, secure those 3 points.
Claudia, I just wanted to ask a question about you before we get back to talking about the victory. There was a big rumour before the season started that you were heading to the UK to play for either a WSL or a second-tier club, and yet Victory, I think they've won the lottery. They seem to be keeping you for the entire season. What does your future actually hold at club level?
Yeah, I was definitely having a look out there. But at the end of the day, I had a really good chat with Jeff, and I was pretty happy to stay another season. And he's a fantastic coach, obviously, playing Premier League himself as a centre back. His knowledge as a defender is really useful to me. And just the setup at the club and the girls I've been playing with over the last couple of years was really awesome for me and another reason for me to stay. So yeah, I'm really happy I made that decision. And looking next season, I'm not too sure what it holds, but yeah, my focus is with Victory this season.
Well, I wanted to ask about Jeff because I have no doubt he was a factor. I mean, we've had a New Zealand team come in Wellington, and it seems as though they haven't got close. They could have offered you the world, but how hard is it to not play for a coach like Jeff Hopkins once you've experienced what it's like to be part of his team? But not just that, to win with him as a coach as well.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Tayo. He is a fantastic coach. Defensively, he knows his stuff. But I think what he's really good at is bringing in good people and managing them really well. Yeah, since he brought me in and like a core group of players a couple of years ago, I think we've established a really good culture and a really good training environment. So it's really hard to say no when he tells you to come back. So he's been fantastic for us as a team and for me individually as well.
Not going to lie, it's been a learning experience for a lot of the Australian media about the New Zealand-based players, and Wellington has certainly helped over the last 2 seasons. But you've got a far better knowledge. You've played in the local league over there, or the national league, I should say, over there. Plus, you're part of the New Zealand national setup, and you would see how many of these players are coming through the youth national teams. How have you tracked the Phoenix's progress, and what benefits do you think their addition has made to the national team? Because we saw a lot of those players go to Costa Rica and play for the under-20s, but many of them are now making their senior national team debut as well.
Yeah, it's really awesome. And I think to have a professional women's team in New Zealand is a huge milestone. Kind of the path was after you do 17s and 20s, you kind of have to make a big leap to play professional football, either here or majority of girls went to Europe. So there was like a bit of a gap. But I think what we're seeing now is a really clear pathway for girls that don't want to especially go through the US college system. They can start playing professionally for the Phoenix or in the A-League as well in general. So I think, yeah, we're starting to see like a new age of players come through, and I think it'll only benefit the Ferns moving forward.
Claudia, I was lucky to be at both of the friendlies that you guys played against Argentina a couple of weeks ago. Not the desired result, but by all means, clearly showing signs of improvement. Like you said, you've got great talent coming through and lots of depth in that squad now. What's the mentality of the team heading into this Women's World Cup? And obviously you're excited. We're excited. It's in Australia and New Zealand. We get to co-host it together. But just talk us through that mentality of the team and how everyone's feeling with it only a few months away.
Yeah, we're all very excited. Like you alluded to, the last tour wasn't great, losing all 3 games. But yeah, we're in a bit of a rebuilding phase, and I think with all the new players coming in, and Yitka's definitely trying different combinations. I don't know how many players she's used over the last 12 months, but I think we're starting to see, and she's starting to fine tune things. So it's exciting that I reckon we have a bigger pool of players to use, and more players playing professionally overseas is only going to make our Fern squad better. And it's pretty competitive at the moment. I couldn't tell you what our starting 11 would look like. But yeah, everyone's really excited. And yeah, hopefully we can make some history, because the Ferns have never won a World Cup game before. So that's our main priority.
And additional history for Victory potentially, as well as you try to get into the top 4 and go for that 3-peat championship. So I just wanted to ask about one of your teammates that's new this season, Jessica Nash, because you were teammates and also good friends with Polly Doran last season, who's since left. Now Jessica Nash comes in. How have you tracked her progress? Because she's still such a young player, got that Matildas cap when she was still only 17 and maybe went in the deep end. How have you seen her progress moving to a new city? Have you taken her under your wing, and how have you actually seen her development as she climbs back towards potential Matilda selection at some point in the future?
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. Nashi, I forget sometimes is only just 17, 18. It seems to me like she's more around my age. She's great to play next to. She's definitely, I think, as the season's gone on, her performances have been stronger. And I think because she had spent quite a bit of time playing centre back, switching to fullback might have taken her a little while to adjust to. But we work really well together, and she's a great communicator on the field. And I think with the young Matildas, she was wearing the armband, so she definitely has really good qualities on and off the pitch, and could definitely be a leader for the future.
One player who won't be there for the derby on Monday, Claudia, is Elise Kellor-Knight. Had that Achilles injury in training. We know she had her op this week. What kind of an update can you give us on where KK's at, how it happened in training, and indeed how she's pulled up from that surgery?
Yeah, it was an awful thing for KK to go through. I live with her, so yeah, I'm spending quite a bit of time with her. She's in pretty good spirits despite the circumstances, obviously, with World Cup looming. There's a lot of uncertainty around that, but she's been a trooper as she is in every aspect of her life, and her mum's actually down, so she's just had her surgery, and mum's here for a bit, which is really nice. And yeah, there's a big group of us that all live together, so I think that's been really good for her. And yeah, she's still been in and around the team heaps. So yeah, she's definitely making the most of this, unfortunate circumstance. I think she's enrolled to like 10 different uni courses, so she's keeping busy for sure.
Please let her know that we're thinking of her. And Claudia, good luck in the Melbourne Derby on Monday.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Claudia Bunge from the Melbourne Victory, also a Football Ferns International, joining us on Dub Zone. And if there's anyone who knows how to rehab a serious injury, it's Elise Kellor-Knight. She's had a tough run, Ish, but she is such a smart human and footballer, and you know that she'll put everything into the rehab as well.
Yeah, it's such a horrible injury, I must admit. Ruptured Achilles, it really is. But, you know, KK, she's been there before. She's a consummate professional, and it's just day by day. It's just about the process. You make small little gains every day, and you try and keep that momentum going.
We did have a goal while we were speaking to Claudia Bunge. Action underway right across our 3 games here on Dub Zone this afternoon. But let's go to Adelaide at Perth to begin with. Teo, Perth have the goal they've been chasing.
Yeah, they do. And what a day it's been for the New Zealanders, because Hannah Blake, the mid-season injury replacement signing that came in for Riley Baisden, has opened the scoring here. Her second goal, she scored against Western earlier in the campaign. That's Hannah Lowry with the assist, and the easiest of tap-ins for the New Zealand international. She has a handful of caps, Hannah Blake. She was playing college in America, and that's just right place, right time, able to beat Emily Hodgson to the ball. But Adelaide with an equaliser, and we mentioned it in the first half. Dylan Holmes scored the only goal against Perth in the away game. Well, she draws a block here, then the save, but not quite from Morgan Aquino. It's fine margins. The ball crept over the line, and Dylan Holmes scores the equaliser to make it Adelaide 1, Perth 1. So Perth were in the lead for barely 3 minutes, maybe even 2 minutes in this game, and that is an agonising moment. It's fine margins, but look how close it was, just creeping over the line. So we were waiting for a goal, and now we have 2 in quick succession.
We do. I mean, it was coming in this game, wasn't it, with all those chances in the first half. But I think both of those goals have come from poor defensive clearances as well, and probably from mistakes. But it was Hannah Lowry who put that ball in really straight across the end of across goal on the 6-yard box. But that's what happens. You can get punished if you're not clearing those lines, clearing your lines and getting the rest of your players up, and both teams have been.
And Alex Epakis will be tearing his hair out on the sidelines, because after all that hard work to take the lead, Perth have handed it right back in the space of less than 3 minutes. We're going to get another replay of it here. That's Katie Bowler, who doesn't get the assist because of the block shot initially, but it was her hard work to get the ball into the penalty area for Dylan Holmes. And at the moment, Opta's putting it down as a Morgan Aquino owned goal. So the Grinch is working at Opta today.
It was a tough one, wasn't that?
Well,
just snuck through her legs. She just didn't quite get hold of it.
I will admit, it's heresy, but I traded Dylan Holmes out of my fantasy team. So if it's an own goal to Morgan Aquino, that's fine. I'm not going to go chasing them for the points.
Otherwise, you'd be ready to have
I'd be
a
on
word.
the warpath, yeah.
You mentioned Football Ferns there. In terms of this game, Adelaide-Perth, Teo, and we heard Claudia Bunge say it as well, Ish, that real push for spots in the starting 11 from a New Zealand perspective. And as very much an outsider, it has felt for a number of years like you could name that New Zealand starting 11 any point of the season, any point of the year. You could probably get pretty close to naming who would start. Whereas now with Yitka in charge, it feels like there are so many different people getting an opportunity and a lot more tussling for position.
Yeah, well, they've gone through that transition, haven't they, of the players like Sarah Gregorius retiring. They had such a stable squad for so many years, and now they're just in that rebuilding process, and it's a great opportunity for the younger players to come in and make their mark and impress Yitka.
Let's have a look around the grounds, Teo. Second half underway at all three venues this afternoon. We know we've had 2 goals in the second half of Adelaide at Perth. The scores remaining unchanged, though, elsewhere.
Yes, and we can go up to Perry Park live for the first time. I'm going to name drop another former Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull. The NBN has been connected, and we are now watching Western United chasing an equaliser here against the Brisbane Roar. They've been 1-0 down to Shay Connor's strike since the 18th minute. Katrina Gorry in the wars, always drawing fouls, as is often the case. I can tell you that Brisbane Roar subbed off Larissa Crummer at halftime for Holly Palmer. So it did miss last week with a hamstring injury and perhaps not able to last the full 90 at the moment, of course. I think the Roar... Interesting, when we spoke to Larissa on this program, we actually asked her, will Gareth McPherson play you in the positions that Tony Gustafsson uses you for the Matildas? And Larissa Crummer said she actually enjoys playing up top, and it's a question for the coach. So again, I don't think this is a substitution made with the World Cup or Matildas in mind. This is a selection perhaps made with today in mind, that if Larissa Crummer isn't 100% fit, they're going to get Holly Palmer on. But it is interesting they've taken a centre forward off for a central midfielder. So that also means that they're going to perhaps switch the team up a bit here in the second half and look for a different combination. Maybe Gorry in a more advanced role as they try to build on this lead. But it would be a real statement if they could beat Western United today, given that Western, until last week, were the top team on the table.
Well, Teo, no, I thought I saw someone tweet and actually say that Brisbane started with 3 at the back. I know on the formations here it has 4, so maybe that's what they're doing. They're consolidating. You know, they're in the lead now. Be conservative for the first 10 or 15 minutes and then see where the half takes you.
As far as chances being created, Western United have had 8 shots, 3 on target, but an XG of only 0.36, so none of them have been gilt-edged opportunities. And in the second half, 11 minutes so far, noughts across the board. The one thing that has flipped is Brisbane have now got 60-40 possession. So I said in the first half that Western don't like dominating the ball. They actually want to hit on the counter. Maybe they're actually starting to get what they want, but they haven't actually turned it into any chances on goal just yet.
And maybe Brisbane have just decided to sit back a little bit, you know, get that 4 at the back so they don't have to push up and there's not as much space in behind. And if you keep teams playing in front, and if Western United don't particularly like to play that way, then you get very frustrated. If there's not any space in behind, then you've got to find another way to unlock the Brisbane defence.
Just on the maths, Brisbane can still finish with as many as 29 points this season. If they win today, they'd move to 20. It would put them just 3 behind Melbourne Victory, and then they would all strap on their navy blue. No, they wouldn't. They'd strap on their city blue, and they would cheer for Melbourne City to beat Melbourne Victory on Monday, but not before they put on their red and black hoops and cheer for Western Sydney Wanderers to beat Canberra tomorrow. So they need favours. It's out of their hands at the moment. But if they win and then get favourable results elsewhere over the rest of the long weekend, it may well flip back in their favour.
And Teo, just watching some of these highlights, Katrina Gorry Mini's in absolutely everything for the Roar. She's had a couple of heavy challenges. She's been on the end of it. She's just recovered there and just done a slide tackle. I mean, her work rate is absolutely exceptional, and we're very lucky that she's come back into the Matildas fold. And I think, you know, that combination of Kyra Cooney-Cross and Katrina Gorry in the midfield is really strong.
You can see just how needed she is. You know, the absence from
She's a fantastic... She always has been a fantastic player. I played with her at Mount Cravat Hawks, actually, when she was just a young whippersnapper.
Mount Cravat Hawks.
Mount Cravat 4122.
I love that.
You know, she's always had that ability to score absolute bombs and cracking goals. She had to mature maybe in her attitude and her application to the training environment. She was sometimes brought in and then being given a break, but she always had that ability, and it was just an opportunity to see her grow and mature. And, you know, with Harper, her daughter, she just seems she's a complete player. She's a complete person. It's like everything, all the pieces of the puzzle have come together.
Speaking of Gorry, she's just one of many Matildas that have awesome stories and a history of football that we might not know enough about. But there's a tweet that just came up earlier about this new Matildas docuseries that has come about, which is so exciting. There was news over the week about it being released by Disney Plus. It's a partnership with Football Australia and the Matildas to really share those stories, and you worked on that project. So I'd love to get a bit of insight from you on what it was like creating that docuseries and what we can expect from it as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was a dream job for me. So I was Football Australia's representative on the docuseries, so the go-between for the team and trying to bridge the gap between documentary making and football and the high-performance environment. And I think what people will see is a really nice insight into what it means to be a Matilda, because these players absolutely love it, and also what they do away from the pitch. So getting to know them away from the football pitch and getting a really nice insight. And Katrina features pretty heavily, and we had some great filming with her.
What's the number one thing we don't know that we'll learn? Say when the
well, I can't tell you until you watch it.
Spoiler
Why
alert.
am I going to tell you, Teo?
Well, because I'm going to ask that question just in case. You save me.
I think you'll find
save me the time.
What we're trying to find is to understand the players' personalities away from the football pitch, because that's what people want the inside. We see them. You see them in interviews. There's a lot of social media and stuff like that. But what are they doing in their everyday lives, in their downtime, and also what do they come up against? Being in the Australian team, being a Matilda actually means you're the most travelled athlete in the world, because the amount of kilometres they have to travel between where they're playing in Europe and back to Australia is really challenging. But one thing that's never changed is, and it really helped me reconnect with how amazing it is to be a Matilda and how proud I was to be able to pull on the green and gold jersey, and that feeling never changes. And you know, it's again just great to see the transition of some of those younger players that I played with at the end of my career, now the experienced players in the Matildas.
How long did they follow the girls for? What's the period of time that we get to experience?
Yeah, so it's basically a year in the life of the Matildas. Yeah, so we followed them for a whole year, so there was a few ups and downs in there, but it was a fantastic experience. I'm so grateful that I was involved in it.
I'll come at this question from a different
Go
angle.
on, Teo. Where are you going? What are you going?
With A-League's All Access, I must admit, I loved the Ruben Zadkovich documentary because you see all the effing and jeffing when he does his team talks, but you also get to see how he uses data and analysis, and he's got a real modern coach's brain to go with all the fire and brimstone. And then we got to see him at home where he has 3 daughters. Like, it was an incredible contrast. It may as well have been 3 different people all wrapped into the one enigmatic person.
You're going to see that.
Here's my question.
You're absolutely going to see that,
who
Teo.
is the player that we know the least, do you think, based on how they present to the public, that we will get to know? Who's the player that's going to change our minds and change our perceptions, and sort of a bit like how I'm now on Team Ruben. Who is going to be the Team Ruben of this documentary?
Oh, that's a tough question. I mean, we got a really lovely insight into Courtney Vine and Charlie Grant and a couple of younger players who are now making and have matured hugely over the past year. And to see their progression through this docuseries, I think people are going to really enjoy that. And they're just fantastic humans. Like, honestly, yeah. I mean, Charlie Grant, I don't think I've ever seen Charlie without a smile on her face. She is just like the salt of the earth. Got a lot of time for her.
What about a player like Ellie Carpenter, who you'll get to see a good bit of in the documentary? She plays for Lyon in France now. She made that transition as still a very young player, growing into her football as well as her person and her personality. She now speaks fluent French. Like, she's remarkable.
With her Cara accent.
She does, which I think is incredible. There's great insight there for young footballers as well, in terms of making that move internationally from a New South Wales country town and absolutely owning it.
Yeah, Ellie's an extraordinary human being, and if you think there was quite a bit of controversy around her decision to leave school and pursue a football career at such a young age, but she had a specific goal in mind, and that one of those goals was to play for Lyon and to win Champions League and to win trophies. And she is such a key part of that Lyon team. And it's just, I mean, it's wonderful hearing Ellie's proper Aussie accent amongst all the French, all her French teammates who, you know, lovely accent and stuff like that. And then Ellie just comes in with the booming, oh yeah. I mean, it's, yeah, she's incredible. And the way that she is single-mindedly focused and, actually, I was at the game, the Champions League game, when she went down. She ruptured her cruciate, I was with Lydia Williams, and it was absolutely heartbreaking. But You know, these are the things that actually build character, and it's a good experience that she's gone through, and probably gave her a nice break from the game for a little while, to be honest.
Not just that, it was in a Champions League final.
I
mean, up there with World Cup finals. Last season's Champions League final at Turin, at Juventus Stadium. One of the best games of women's football and one of the best spectacles you could ask to see. And yet Ellie Carpenter, we saw her jumping, with one leg and the huge knee brace on to go out and get the trophy. She didn't let it affect the fact that she was going to enjoy that Lyon won the Champions League. They won the biggest club prize in women's football.
Well, that's what it is to be an athlete. Injuries are part of your career. You might be lucky to go through your career. I had 2 knee reconstructions about 7 years apart. And that's a test of your resilience and character. But as I say, it's just about a process. Every day you get a little bit better and you get to reintegrate into the team. I think the hardest thing is that you miss all your teammates. Because when you're doing your rehab and you're with the physio and it's 1v1 or you're in the gym by yourself, it's kind of like, where's everyone? It's probably that you miss them. Well, that I miss the most as well. So I used to go stand at the side of training as well, just be like, what's going on? Just had FOMO.
Yeah,
just constant FOMO
again.
Nothing out.
Come and talk to me. Someone come and talk to me. Let's have a look around the grounds. We've got 3 games underway for you. Second half of all 3 here on Dub Zone. Simultaneous kickoffs this Saturday afternoon. It is 1-1 in Adelaide between Adelaide and Perth. In Sydney at Kogarah, it is the Knicks who have held on to that lead. I need my glasses. 66th odd minute, I reckon, at Netstrata Jubilee. And it is Brisbane Roar with the lead over Western United. But a potential pen call here, Teo.
This is huge. I think it's on the edge of the penalty area. You just saw Dylan Holmes protesting to the referee there. There was a yellow card as well, but it looks like it's just outside the box. When we had the 4 boxes up there before, we also saw a marvellous save from Hilary Beale to deny Shay Connors. So we'll have a look at that in a moment because Western are clinging on to what's a 1-0 deficit at the moment. But Adelaide thought they should have had a penalty. Beck Mackey's a good operator as a referee, and you see how far outside the box this is here. So Kim Carroll goes in the book. Hey, lucky it wasn't red because she's on track to break the game's record before the end of the home and away season. If she gets sent off and suspended, she won't do it.
Well, I'm a former teammate of Kim's at Brisbane Roar. I'll tell you a story about after this free kick comes in, actually.
Mindy Barbieri, this is to keep Adelaide's season alive here. If they can take the lead and go on to win today, they've got a barely an outside run mathematically, but they can revive some hope if this goes in. Good save from Morgan Aquino.
Oh, wow.
And that goes out for a corner, but that was firmly struck from Barbieri there.
Quality strike from Barbieri, just trying to tuck that into the far corner. That was really the only spot that she could have. But, I mean, that's still a tough angle. Tried to keep it low, make it difficult for the keeper. Keeper unsighted as well. She's made a very good save.
Is that just a terrific free kick, or was the wall in slightly the wrong position to give her that opportunity?
Well, I think it depends. It may have been set up a little bit differently, but maybe they were trying to protect the far post in that one rather than the near post because she might have to go up and over. Potentially, they may have set it up just a little bit wrong.
Nanako Sasaki with the corner here. Mariska Waldes the obvious target as 3 headers pinball around. It falls in the 6-yard box and eventually it's scrambled out. Both teams appealing that it's... Oh, look at this. Perth are up in arms. They don't think it's a corner. And now the assistant referee comes in and overrules and says a goal kick. Well, they were all in concert on that one saying it was definitely a goal kick and they survive that opportunity.
Yeah, as I was saying, so yeah, Kim Carroll, my former teammate, like one of the most technically gifted players that I've ever seen, but she moved down from Tully. So she went to boarding school with another Brisbane Roar player, Alana Reid. And I used to pick them up on the way to training and they would not say a word. They just wouldn't say anything. I'd ask them a question and be like, how was school today? Good. Okay, right. Anything else to just but just an incredible player, but I couldn't get a chat out of him at all. And I love it. I love a chat.
Today is game 154. Teresa Polias' games record is 157.
Teresa, what a legend Teresa Polias is as well. Yeah, I mean, Kim's... I feel that Kim probably didn't have the extended international career that I thought she was going to have when we first saw her at the Brisbane Roar.
60 caps is a lot.
Yeah, decent. Maybe I expected her just to stay around forever, to be honest, but she had a couple of knee injuries as well, from memory. But she started as a striker, I think, and then kind of slowly moved back. And similar to Elise Keller-Knight, she came in and was a striker and then got repurposed as a left back, which she wasn't overly happy about at the time. But yeah, just both versatile players with incredible technique and tactical awareness.
Let's head around the grounds now. Western United taking on Brisbane Roar. It is the Roar with the lead in this game, but Western United, Teo, with a couple of opportunities in the second half.
Yeah, so desperately chasing an equaliser here, Western United. They know that they'll be the one team that actually wants victory to win on Monday to stop Melbourne City's charge. Here's a chance for Hannah Keane trying to draw back level with Michelle Heyman at the top of the golden boot. It was Angie Beard swinging the cross in, took a slight deflection, and then you got to credit the defender there for just putting Keane off at the last. And then a giveaway here from Sydney Cummings. Her passing was not great in the game against Sydney at the weekend either. Shay Connors exploiting through the right channel, and that is fingertip stuff there from Hilary Beale. And you can see her geeing up her defence, not happy with how possession was given away. And it's not just the swing of the ball. That is a top draw save.
That is an absolute quality save that was going in. I was just saying, I think Brisbane look like they're sitting a little bit too deep now, and they're actually encouraging Western United to actually apply more pressure, and they need to be very careful. But then they've got such a quick counter-attack, and there's plenty of space in behind that Western United defence to exploit.
Sydney Cummings has been a great player for Western this season, has scored 4 goals, a clutch penalty in the game against Melbourne City, really important in the air as well, but she's not the greatest passer. And when it comes to who plays the ball out from the back, whether it's a midfielder dropping deep, whether you have a designated defender that plays the ball out of the 2 centre mids. We'll come back to that because we've got news of another goal, which we're going to have to go to here. And it's in the Adelaide-Perth game. So who is taking the lead? This is Annalie Grove clearing for Adelaide here. The header flicked on, and Adelaide are away through the right side. Katie Bowler has been causing all sorts of trouble in this game. A deep cross and a totally unmarked header. Adelaide 2-1, and I do believe it is the Dolan medalist who has nodded it in. Yep, Fiona Wirtz, just her second goal of the season, and that will be sweet relief for her. Last season's Golden Boot, last season's Dolan medalist, and both her headers this season have been, both her goals this season have been headers. Where was the Perth defence, though? Completely absent marking, and there was no way the Englishwoman was going to miss that chance. What a good goal.
It was a fantastic ball into the far post as well, but just see that quick transition from defence to attack from Adelaide. And Fiona Wirtz, quality finish at the back post there.
And the assist for Katie Bowler.
Was that Katie Bowler?
With the assist.
Yeah.
2 weeks in a row. She had the goal last week, the assist this week. Young player, only 20 years old from Adelaide City, who's come into Adrian Stenter's team and has really, I think, nailed down a long-term spot as an A-League women's player into the future, which is, again, credit to the production line coming out of South Australia.
Yeah, she did really well. I think Kim Carroll was going over to close her down a little bit, and it was a bit in two minds of whether, because they only had a couple of players at the back, just to try and hold her, and she dropped off a little bit. And Katie Bowler put in that fantastic ball to the far post.
This is season on the line stuff for Perth, though. This would be a huge loss if they go down today.
We'll keep a very close eye on all 3 games here on Dub Zone, the Savo, but we have been exploring this afternoon that shift in international women's football where we've seen players speaking up about the conditions, about their concerns within their federations and indeed their training and playing setups. We spoke to Tom Samani a little bit earlier for the coach's perspective. Let's hear from a player now as well. Sarah Gregorius is a former New Zealand international. She's now with the Players Union FIF Pro, and she is the Director Global Policy and Strategic Relations in women's football. I spoke to her a little bit earlier on today. She's based in Amsterdam. It's very early hours of the morning there now. And I started by asking her about how organisations and how important it is that footballing organisations can create a really safe space for players where they feel able to raise these concerns when they arise.
I've seen a lot, certainly in my role recently, that players often experience retaliation when they step out, when they speak out against their federations. And so it's really important that that dialogue is there, but also that players are protected and that there isn't a consequence for speaking up with very, very legitimate concerns. It's not as if players are asking for things that are completely out of the box. Usually it's just for fair and equitable treatment, for their voices to be heard. And to have exactly that, an open dialogue, for there to be transparency on both sides.
Sarah Gregorius there, a former player, now involved in the FIF Pro Union, supporting players around the game. And such an interesting point, Ish. And we see players risk a huge amount. Wendy Renal, for example, has spoken out, risked potentially missing what would be her final World Cup for France, one of the great players of the game, by raising concerns within the French setup. That need for a safe space, for open dialogue, is so important.
Yeah, and I think all the players now have a bigger platform and more visibility. So to be able to speak out, there's maybe more avenues for support as well, similar to FIFPro and the PFAs and the unions actually supporting these players now. But yeah, the key thing is the open dialogue, making sure that it doesn't need to be, it's still a confrontational conversation, but it needs to be honest and transparent. And I think that's absolutely crucial. And as I said, Tom Samani was my favourite coach of all time, and it was because it was always open, honest communication, and it was transparent, and you knew, and there was never any personal bias to any of his decision making. And I think sometimes that can become a bit tricky for some coaches, for some players as well. So it's great to hear Sarah's take on that.
This isn't new, though, because Ada Hegerberg boycotted the last World Cup in a 5-year protest against the Norwegian Federation. Amon Dean Henry has internationally retired twice under both Corinne Diacre and Philippe Bergerou and walked away from international football due to the way the French Federation was run. So it's not new. It's almost a sort of a long burning issue, but it's come to the surface in such a way now, and it's because of the momentum that women's football is generating around the world. How important is it that now the power brokers, FIFA in particular, it's their tournament that's at risk? It's half the Spanish national team. It's Putellas, the back-to-back Ballon d'Or winner. It's Bonmatí, one of the best players in the world, and that Barcelona team that might win the Champions League and then send none of their members to the World Cup. I mean, they can't afford the optics of this. They can't afford the lack of football quality in this, but also they just can't afford to have this be what they represent. How do they actually bring the parties to the table, these national federations, and say, France, Spain, others, pull your heads in. It's time. It's us who are suffering FIFA now. You cannot keep doing this to us.
Yeah, well, I mean, is it FIFA's I know they're a member, in charge of all the member
federations. They govern the federations.
They govern the federations, but they don't tell the federations what to do. These are federations that should be able to clean their own dirty laundry. And unfortunately, it's concerning that there's a few teams where it's a mass protest. You can have individual players who might not be happy with decisions or happy with some of the conditions that you have, but when you've got 15 of the key players of that Spanish team who are quite happy, all they've ever wanted to do since they were a young player is put on the Spanish shirt and play for their national team, and it's gotten to a stage where they said, I can't do it anymore, and step away. And for the federation to then back the coach and support the coach, and I don't know all the details of it, so I can't comment on it too much, but there's a fundamental huge breakdown of communication.
Just on...
I was just going to something that I feel comes up in conversation a lot off the back of all of this, Spain, Canada, France, is are there more issues now in women's football than in the past? And
there's always issues. There's always issues in professional sport. There's always going to be issues. There always has been issues. I think the processes to deal with them and the ways to communicate it are a lot better now and a lot more structured, which is great. And you've got more avenues to be able to bring up those concerns.
I asked Sarah Gregorius about that actually in the conversation, and I asked her about the shift for her from her time as a player to now in the role that she's in and watching these different issues unfold and what she thinks has changed. We'll hear from Sarah Gregorius in just a moment's time to speak a little bit more about that player power and indeed whether there has been a shift in recent times.
I think what's maybe been the biggest shift is everything around the players. So now we just have a fundamentally different ecosystem. Some of the platforms that players these days have for themselves are just bigger than the federations. They're bigger than the clubs, they're bigger than the leagues, and they're bigger than some of the governing bodies and competition organisers. So their reach is there. So when they speak, they have a very, very large audience who are very supportive of them. There is a different level of scrutiny that can be applied this way as well. There are a lot of organisations that will respond to that public pressure. And I think it's also really important to note what's happening even now in this conversation. Like, there is more media attention. There are journalists who take an investigative approach now to some of these stories, because we know that often where there's smoke, there's fire. And
Sarah Gregorius there. It's such an interesting point, Ish, about this ecosystem that exists around the players now. Some of these players are huge international brands in their own right. So when they speak about an issue that exists, no offense to your Instagram following, but I'm not sure Instagram was even a thing back in the game when you were playing, so I don't know how you raised these concerns.
Carrier pigeon when I was carrier pigeon.
The shift has been big, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we say, they've got a powerful platform and people have a powerful voice, and I think it's not for players. Players don't, players want to have a happy environment and just play the game, really. But sometimes, unfortunately, you don't get the support, you don't get the facilities, you don't feel like you're a valued member of a national team or a federation or a club or whatever. And it's just, I think it's healthy to be able to have those communication lines and the ability to have the dialogue in the first place.
How much have you seen change since you went to the UK 10 years ago? You played for Millwall and you iced up boots. How much have you seen change over that decade in terms of the conversation and the quality of the conversation that exists around women's football?
Huge change, I would say, even within the UK. When I first arrived, I think the WSL then was in its infancy, and I think comparable to what was then the W League over here. But the biggest change that we've seen is that the investment of the big Premier League clubs, and it's not just money, it's not just facilities, but it's a very one club mentality. So all the branding, for example, Ella Toone, absolute legendary player for the Lionesses, plays for Man United. She's up on the side of Old Trafford, right next to, when he was there, Cristiano Ronaldo. That's pretty huge. So all the marketing, all the social media, there's interactions between the male players and the female players at the training venues as well. And the everyday training environment is at the highest level.
Ish, it's so true, because as in I have a friend who had an experience, went to that Euros final. He's English, but he's lived here for a couple of years. Just in the time that he's spent since he was back in England, he couldn't believe it was black and white, the difference.
Absolutely.
In terms of the contrast of football, women's football before he left versus going back. His mates were all talking about it. It was, where are you going to be to watch the Euro final? It wasn't about the women's, it was just supporting England. And I think I look at what they do in the WSL and that English national team and think they really have set the bar. But it's not about there being more issues in women's football. It's women understanding their rights and like you said, building their profiles to the point where they have certain expectations and those should be fulfilled. And you look at Christine Sinclair, for example, and her treatment by Canada, the board looking after the Canadian football team, and they're not happy because there is blatant disrespect. And it's not that the bar is too high, it's that the bar's been too low, I think, for too long.
Absolutely. All we want is to be treated equally and to be treated with respect, and that's all we've ever wanted. And I think, there's been a lot of times where we haven't felt that way. And like you say, it's just the game of football, whether it's men's or whether it's women's. But, the attitude towards football to women's football when I first got to the UK was I was pretty taken aback, I must admit. Because growing up in Australia, I never had an issue playing football. Never had an issue being the only girl playing in a boys' team. Again, we're a sports-mad country. It was fantastic. Absolutely loved it. And I was doing a coaching at an academy, and there was a young girl there. She was 7. She was better than all the boys. And I was talking to her about what team she played for, and it was supposed to be her brother's team, but because she was so good, all the parents from the other teams complained, and so she just stood on the sideline for the season. This is a 7-year-old girl, and that was in 2012, and wow. I couldn't believe. I love how far it's come, but it needed to come a long way, and it has turned around quickly. But with success, that makes it better, and you can see we're 10 years into the professional life of women's footballers, and you're seeing the fruits of that labour, because the quality of the football is huge and it has improved.
There's a comment here from Rose saying it's probably also because players recognise their current worth, and when you look at the transition for the Matildas, and they had their period where they had a strike and they understood that their brand was on the rise, and I think it's about the players understanding how important they are as well for the growth of that game and knowing what they deserve. And I'm sure that's something that you're fully across, and you've seen that change over the years as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you have a short career, so the thing with the players now is that they can get commercial deals, they can get individual brand sponsorships, and you need to make the most of it when you can. And with that comes a higher expectation of what you think you deserve and how the conditions are and how you're treated. And I think it's where we always wanted to get to. There's still room to improve. There's still a lot of room to improve. But to see where it's come on, Julie Foudy, ex-US international, always says, you know, we're making progress, but it's still a bit slow. We've made a lot of progress, but we'd still like to see it. And I feel like it's speeding up. I feel like in the last couple of years it's sped up.
With your sneaker obsession, how's your quest for a brand sponsorship going?
Adidas, so you could just
contact me on this
actually,
number.
you know what I mean? Nike, Adidas, both of them. I can't do the competing brands, can I?
So it's Team Neve or Team Cat,
That's
basically.
it.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
choose now.
Yeah.
Teo, take us around the grounds because we're into the final 10 minutes of our 3 games here on Dub Zone this afternoon. It remains 2-1, Adelaide leading Perth. The Knicks scored the early goal against Sydney FC and they've managed to hold tight thus far, in Brisbane Roar holding on to their lead over Western United. Let's head to Kogarah and check out a Sydney FC chance as they look for that equaliser, Teo.
Yeah, Brianna Redwoods continues to really impress in goal for Wellington Phoenix. This attack starting right at the edge of the defensive penalty area for Sydney FC. Mackenzie Hawkesby playing it to Courtney Vine, so a couple of the prime movers for Sydney FC. Vine just turns on the afterburners here. You see Hawkesby in the middle and sweeping the right-footed shot, but a good save by Edwards, and it goes just wide of the post, and you can see how fired up Bree Edwards is there. Courtney Vine, well, I suggested in the first half, are they playing to the occasion, Sydney FC? The big guns are stepping up now, but Wellington are playing well enough and maybe getting the slices of luck to hold them out.
Should have scored, Teo.
Should have scored well. At the other end, Wellington had a chance to take a 2-0 lead, and this could have been curtains. This is Michaela Robertson here, coming off the bench, the little pocket rocket,
wow.
and putting it just across the face. And you can see the height difference there against Charlie Rule, but, well, the shot nearly finding its way into the corner. And now, with less than 5 minutes to go, it is Wellington holding on to what would be a landmark win, but also the second time this season that Last has beaten First in the league.
Yeah, great result for Wellington, isn't it? But you have to say Sydney should be equal there. I think that was a really badly missed opportunity. Maybe just a little dink over the keeper, but, you know, it's the fine margins in that clinical finishing.
Perth will be furious that they are losing to Adelaide, 1.9 XG to 0.86. Adelaide at the moment holding on to a 2-1 lead deep into the second half. And at the moment, there's less than 4 minutes to go there. Perth with Hannah Blake, their Kiwi goal scorer, still on the attack. I can tell you that up in Brisbane, it is still Brisbane Roar 1, Western United 0. So we're getting, I think, 3 upsets in all 3 games at the moment. In terms of who the perceived underdogs are, I know 2 home teams are currently in the lead, but I do think it's 3 underdogs that are all leading in these games at the moment. So it's been an extraordinary afternoon on Dub Zone.
It's exactly what you said, Ish. When it's competitive, this is the type of results we can expect to see. I love it personally. I think it makes Dub Zone much more interesting, doesn't it? But why is it that I feel like I notice bottom teams beating top teams quite often? Is there something in the mentality of that top team potentially heading into that team? The wooden spooners, they're likely to beat them, thinking, hey, we probably don't have to play our best in order to beat them, but that's not always the case, especially if it's in a competitive league.
Yeah, definitely. There could be sometimes a touch of complacency and thinking that it is a bottom team, but it's again, like I said, it's fine margins in this game, and that's what's great to see. I think you want to see every game being competitive, and also when it's always easier to chase than being the chased. So it's easy to be the underdog. I always find this out, especially our Australian mentality. We love being the underdog. But sometimes it seems weird that we don't really settle into when we're favourites. Yeah. But it's just a hell of a lot easier.
Free kick here for Nanako Sasaki in Adelaide, too close to the near post and held on to by Morgan Aquino. This game is at the 88-minute mark. So is Sydney against Wellington, Brisbane against Western United at 87 minutes. So all the timers have coordinated it perfectly today. Offside flag is up. Adelaide have subbed on Chrissy Panagaris for her A-League women's debut as well. So congratulations to Chrissy, a great long-time player in the NPL South Australia.
This is the live ladder, Teo. We know you love the numbers. Talk us through this, because as it stands in each of our games this afternoon, both Sydney FC and Western United missing their opportunity to go clear at number 1 on the Liberty A-League ladder.
And this makes that Melbourne derby on Monday so important, because you see their victory. If they lose, if they're left on 23, the door is open to Canberra and to Brisbane, who are reviving. Perth will fall out of the mix. Adelaide clinging on with barely a hope, and Western Sydney Wanderers not mathematically eliminated yet. but they can only get to 24, I believe. So they almost certainly will be, depending on the outcome of that tribunal or that appeal that we expect Canberra to file against their 2-1 overturned result. So into the last minute, down in Adelaide, as we see Adelaide happy to waste time. They've brought on Paige Hayward to do exactly that. We'll go up to Brisbane now because this game is in the dying stages. Raw are making a couple of time-wasting subs. Katrina Gorry comes off. Tamar Levin and Jessie Rashart. So both a youngster and a veteran coming on, and Sian Fryer is the other player making way there. So Raw looking to lock this down and hold on to what would be their first win against a team in the top 4 all season, and that would be significant for them.
I'm taking it as me being lucky. No, it's great to see the Raw turning things around, but I think, definitely Katrina Gorry coming back from injury. She's such a crucial player in both the Matildas and for the Raw as well, and I think she had a great game. She was involved in everything.
How tough is it for Minnie transitioning between the Matildas and Brisbane, where with Brisbane she plays that more advanced, more attacking role, and we saw her with the assist for Brisbane's 1 goal today, switching between the two very different roles in midfield. Is that hard?
I think it may have been to begin with challenging for Minnie, obviously being an attack-minding player and having to sit a bit deeper. And I
need to interrupt.
Yeah,
7 minutes of stoppage time for Sydney Wellington, so they have a heap of time to chase that game.
There you go, 7 minutes. I chatted to Minnie about that, to transitioning and having to be... Yeah.
7 minutes Adelaide, Perth.
7 minutes
7
everywhere.
minutes there.
We've got another 7 minutes
If we get 3
everywhere.
sevens, we're going to have to let a slot machine off somewhere and flood the room with coins.
It's my favourite part of Dub Zone, just watching Teo's face turn into an emoji.
Yeah.
Like when these different things happen at the different spots. Fabulous.
We've got an attack here. No, Wellington defending, desperately clearing away. So over in Adelaide, there's been an injury to one of the Adelaide players. I think they're going to wind the clock down there. Hannah Blake's also been cleaned up by Annalie Grove. So it looks as though 7 minutes of stoppage has started with an injury for the Adelaide keeper, and they're going to have to add even more on as a result. You see Annalie Grove there in the box, and now we've got Hensley handcuffed down for the second time in this game for the Brisbane Roar too. So a bit of concern there for Gareth McPherson and the Roar as they try to hold out Western United, who, to be fair, have not created a huge number of chances in this game. It's not been the best attacking performance from them today. In total, 11 shots, but only 0.63 XG to show for it, only the 3 on target. And so let's stay in Sydney, I think, because that is the most advanced game of the 3. Even with drinks breaks, this game is more or less bang on time with the other 2. And Sydney FC, even an equaliser here could be vital. They don't know that Western are losing today, though. And I tell you who are sitting at home grinning like Cheshire cats. Melbourne City, because they are right back in the title mix if they win the derby, and that means Melbourne victory. If they didn't have enough to play for going for their own top 4 spot, now they're going to try and pop the balloon of a Melbourne City revival as well.
Yeah, big derby win, huge motivation for him, isn't it? I can't believe the 7 minutes. I was going to say, do they continue adding time on in stoppage time, though, with injuries? I don't think they do they?
No, they will. It'll be up to the referee's discretion.
Is it?
Yep.
Right, okay, there you go.
Just make sure the coaches
You
all
learn
make the right
something new
number
every
of
day.
subs and
Yeah.
everyone will be happy.
That's exactly right. Get the more subs on.
How closely do the players watch? Are Melbourne City watching these 3 games, and indeed the 2 in particular play out this afternoon, well aware of the implications?
Yeah, as a player, I used to do that. I was a nosy Parker, and it's nice to have that again, that additional motivation going into a huge derby game on Monday, and it only fuels the fire to get the result.
So if they were to win on Monday, they could be back within 2 points of the top of the league, albeit with Sydney having a game in hand. Here is Courtney Vine, an equaliser now. There'd still be enough time for Sydney FC to go for the win. But Brianna Edwards, who is looking like a nailed-on best-on-ground performance here, as long as this clean sheet holds up. She actually played all through winter in the New South Wales NPL for Bankstown City Lions. So she would have played against Roller Badawia there from Sydney FC, and many of these Sydney FC players all through the winter. All right, a goal is a game changer.
Come on, Raw.
Let's go to Brisbane. Well, hang on, it could be an equaliser. Let's see what happens here. Goal kick from Hensley Handcuff, who has recovered. And now the ball falls for Tamar Levin, who's only just been subbed on, playing it through the middle of the pitch. This is for 2. This is for the Raw win. They are going to beat a top 4 team for the first time this season. And it looks as though it's Shay Connors at the bottom of that pack with a double. And Brisbane Raw, their finals hopes were hanging on by a thread coming into today, but they are going to get the win. And Tamar Levin off the bench with a great assist, and the stretched Western defence. No answers there. And that means it is Raw 2, Western United 0. And that is an unerring finish from Shay Connors, who I believe now has 5 in 5.
Yeah, fantastic finish there from Shay. Sorry for the spoiler alert, everyone who was watching that as well. But, I mean, that's a great finish into the far post as well. I'm assuming that's not on her favoured foot. So her left foot, she had a little look up to see where the keeper was and then just tucked it into the far corner. Fantastic finish.
Connors, who took, I think, 8 or 9 games to start scoring this season, but is on a tear. And this is far more in line with what she'd previously done in the league. She had 8 in 15 over her career coming into the season, then went on a long streak, 9 without a goal, and now has 5 in 5. So this is what she does. And unfortunately for the Raw, it may have come too little too late, but they are at least, if we get more days like today where all the favourites go down, they're mathematically still alive, so anything's possible.
Come on, Raw. Come on, Raw. Let's do it. Come on, Brisbane.
It's the impartiality that you bring to this program that I'm absolutely loving today.
Yeah, exactly.
And you were saying
Go on the Raw.
The quality of the goals.
quality of the goals she's scoring too.
Yeah, it was great. She had
Cleared off the line. Is it 2? I think it's 2, or is it offside? The whistle's gone. And Betsy Hassett and Zoe McMeekin there were ready to celebrate. Wellington pulling off the result of the season instead. Sydney FC with 2 minutes to go, still alive. Oh, it's a tense finish to Dove Zone today.
You can see how much that meant to the Knicks in that moment, can't you? They thought they had the 3 points there against the top side.
And look, the great thing about the Knicks is that they're still going for this game. They haven't just sat back. They've only got a couple of minutes left and they've nearly come away with another goal against Sydney team. So, I mean, there's plenty of space in there now, isn't it? They really, last thing they want to do is concede a late equaliser. It'd just be disaster.
So
that would definitely pop the balloon.
Well, and Newcastle, if they are watching on, will know that they play Wellington in Newcastle. They would be closing to within a point and avoiding potentially the wooden spoon. Now, this is Indiana Dos Santos, the 15-year-old, showing us what she can do. Spraying across out to the right side. Courtney Vine can't get there in time. It was a good run from the youngster. And Sydney FC are trying to keep the pressure on. They haven't committed too many numbers forward here, but they've got all their good attacking players right at the edge of the box, all hunting the ball. And Courtney Vine can't run it down there. So we're into the last minute now. And this would be a famous win for Wellington if they can hold on. Princess Abini. Wellington is sitting so deep that she's onside, almost down at the byline. Is going to cut it back here. Dos Santos again. Knocked off the ball. Can tell you that 30 seconds to go in Adelaide. It's still 2-1. And the Raw now 2-0. They're safe. That's the one result that's no longer in doubt. But Edwards will just lie on the ball here. And the clock will keep ticking, and it'll be all on the referee in just a moment's time for how much extra gets added on for the additional stoppages in these 7 minutes of injury time.
This is one of the best games I think I've seen Edwards play. But just the saves that she's made today are incredible, and she's been so consistent from the whole game, the entire game, that same amount of energy on every save.
She just had a big smile on her face as well when she picked up that ball.
I'm sure she feels good about it as well.
There it is. Wellington beat Sydney. Last beats first for the second time in the Liberty A-League this season. And this topsy-turvy league throws up another incredible day. It looks as though all 3 underdogs are going to get up. And when they call this competition the Chaos League, it is not without merit. What can we say? The title race has just taken a major turn. Western go down, Sydney go down, Melbourne City back in the mix to win the title. I did not think we'd be saying that at kickoff today.
3 great games. It's been fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Brisbane have just finished up as well. Come on, the Raw.
So,
impartiality again, Nevo.
Our last game going is Perth chasing this result here against Adelaide. This is a hammer blow to their hopes for finals. They have games in hand, but they all come thick and fast. And quite simply, if they're losing to Adelaide after a draw with Wanderers, can they equalise here? What a save from Annalie Grove. And it's Abby Green who is denied right at the last. That would have been a 99th minute equaliser. And Grove denies Green. And it means that the score stays at 2-1. The referees added on a little bit extra. Perth, they had the chance. They had the chance to equalise. And Annalie Grove, what a save.
Huge save. It's such a crucial moment there as well. Just watching the referee, see if she's got a whistle in the mouth. She's playing on a fair bit of extra time. Could have another chance in it. She just had a little glance at her watch there. Can't be too much in it, but Perth will be absolutely kicking themselves that they didn't finish that.
Oh, what a great opportunity. And Abby Green is a natural left footer too, so that was played onto her right side of the penalty area and just couldn't shoot it past the keeper. See Janchevsky there with a little back heel. Can Perth get it in the area for one more chance. Tash Rigby now, it's all a little bit slow. And the whistle goes, and Adelaide, they hold on to win. Their season is mathematically alive. You can see Dylan Holmes and Misha Westland, they're celebrating at full time. And on a day where they couldn't even fill the bench, they had to sign another emergency player yesterday in order to fill even a few spots on that bench. They come away with a big win, and that is devastating to Perth's hopes of making the top 4. Tell you what, Canberra didn't have to kick a ball this weekend yet. They play tomorrow, and they've actually come out of today looking all right.
Yeah, you'd have to be happy with that as well, wouldn't you? But some big plays from the goalkeepers during those games. Fantastic stuff.
So, Teo, that is all 3 games at full time here on Dub Zone this afternoon as we have a look around the grounds and check out the scorelines across the 3. We had 3 simultaneous games kicking off for you at Dub Zone. It's been a little while since we've had a Saturday Arvo with all 3 on at the same time and remarkable results. Brisbane Roar beat Western United, who have been top of the table for so much of the season. Adelaide United, whose finals hopes were all but dashed heading into this round, get the job done against Perth Glory, and Sydney FC could have gone 3 points ahead of Western if they could get it done against the bottom place Knicks. But no, Teo, it is Wellington Phoenix with a massive upset to their name.
Look at that table. Look how compressed it is. Melbourne Victory in 4th on 23, all the way down to Adelaide in 8th on 17. Victory have a game in hand. Canberra have a game in hand. Could have another 3 points depending on the appeal. This is an incredible league at the moment, and that table sums it up. It's a log jam. We're getting upset results, and you'd be a fool to try and even project the run home from here, because if we get another day like today where all the underdogs win, then anything is possible.
That's what you want, don't you? It's particularly the run into the end of the season. You want all the teams still competing to play for something, and we've showed that today. It was brilliant.
Especially with the simultaneous kickoffs as well. The fact that Sydney FC didn't know that Western United were losing and vice versa, it just feels like, as we see at the end of the Prem season each year, that it really adds that extra element.
Well, I mean, they'll walk off the pitch and they'll both be cursing their own bad result, and then they'll see the other team lost, and then in the back of their mind they'll go, oh, hang on, that team with Kote Rojas, they're coming for us now.
And as a player, you do have a pretty big sigh of relief when you feel like you haven't performed to your best and you haven't got the result that you wanted, and then you see some of the other results go your way. It's a bit of like, got let off that one. Right, regroup. We need to make sure we keep the positive momentum going.
The one thing I will say is Sydney FC will be relieved that only top teams make the top 4. Their kryptonite are the teams lower on the table. They've blitzed the top 4 this year. And I guess those are the only teams you play in the finals. You don't have to play a Wellington in the final series.
Are there just different styles of play that sometimes suit you as a team? Or is it, as Teo said earlier, that you really get up and find that extra 1% for the big games?
Yeah, as I say, it's difficult to be at the top emotionally and mentally for every single game, you know? It's like every day in the life. You might have a good training session, a bad training session. You just don't want your team collectively to maybe be having a bad day at the same time, because then it makes it very difficult.
Well, for the fans watching today, including us, it was exactly what you want to see at this point in the season. I think a tight table is exactly the result that you want, because I love when finals are in contention. I love when you don't know who's going to win each fixture. And look at Wellington. I mean, what a performance. I did not expect them to beat Sydney FC today, and they did it. And what a win.
That's what you want. That's what you want from your league, that the bottom teams can beat the top teams.
We'll head around the grounds. We'll hear from the players themselves in just a moment's time here on Dub Zone. I can't wait to hear from the Knicks players, actually, what that means to them in just their second season in the competition to beat the might of the Sky Blues and Sydney FC here in Kogarah in Sydney as well. In fact, why don't we do that right now? Kate Taylor from Wellington has been good enough to join us. Kate, what a game from yourself, from your side. Can you talk us through what that means to the Knicks to beat Sydney FC on their home turf?
Hey, yeah, I think it's absolutely awesome. Last time we played them, we were so close, and I think that we really wanted to win out of that one, and I think we should have got it, but I think today it was special, and I look around and there's so many tired bodies, and I think it just means so much to us, and you know, to beat them here at their home ground, it's not easy, and they're a great team, and so I think everyone's super excited and can't wait for the rest of the season.
Kate, up against an attack with Courtney Vine and Princess Abini, Mackenzie Hawkesby and all of those attackers, how hard a job is it to put out all of those spot fires and keep a clean sheet the way you did today?
Yeah, it's super hard. You obviously seen how good Courtney Vine's been at the moment, and the Sydney team at this stage is so good in their front line, and so I think the communication that we had along the back four today was immense, and I think that's what really helped us.
How much is it a necessity that your good performances get rewarded with results and points on the board? Because at times this season, it did feel as though you'd had honourable losses or unlucky results in terms of not being able to get a draw or a win. Today, you actually get something to show for it. How much of a difference does that make to the belief within the group?
Yeah, it's crazy. I think these past few games we've been playing really good, and it's just been those goals and trying to stay ahead that's been keeping us from not winning. And I think today to see that 90-minute performance really showed it, and we came away with the win as well. It's addicting, and I can't wait for the rest of it. But yeah, I think we still have a long way to go, and I think there's still a lot of work to be done, and we will do that. We will continue to push hard every single week.
We saw some footage of the team right at the end there. You guys looked absolutely stoked with the result, as you should be. I mean, what a win against Sydney FC. What were you guys saying? What is the vibe like with a win against the team at the top of the table? And what kind of motivation does that give you heading into what's left this season?
Yeah, I think that, we really wanted to win this game, and we didn't come here to not win. We came here to perform. We came here to beat this awesome Sydney team, and so I think we didn't need that today. We were already pushing, but I think that's the icing on the cake. And 3 points in a win and to score a goal, it always motivates you no matter what. And so this team definitely doesn't need motivation, but I think we have that little bit extra now, and look out.
Kate, you've overcome your own injuries. You're back in the mix for the World Cup team for New Zealand. How are you feeling personally? Where's your football at? And what did days like today do when it's an underdog winning against the odds, maybe extrapolating that out to the New Zealand team that might need to adopt the same mentality to get some results at the World Cup too?
Yeah, obviously the World Cup's really close, and personally I've got a long way to go. I think, every day I want to get better, and even today I know that there's points in my game there needs some work, and I'm happy to do that. I want to be on that pitch every single day getting better, and I same with the Ferns and the same with the Phoenix team.
Kate, before we let you go, can I just ask you about that goal? Talk us through it, because gee whiz, you hit that volley sweetly.
Yeah, I mean, Mickey Foster put on a plate. You just have to get in the right spots, and it was a second phase ball, and we're constantly looking for those balls, and normally I'm trying to get there with my head, but I saw the ball dropping, and I just had to take a swing, and that's what I did today.
And Kate, we spoke to Claudia Bunge during the show. She joined us, and I asked her the same question about what the Wellington Phoenix program has done for the New Zealand national team, not just the senior team, but the junior national teams as well. This is the second season of it now. Just how valuable has it been, and how much do days like today help the progression of New Zealand football?
Yeah, I think this team's been immense for the Ferns, and definitely for the under-20s. When we went to that World Cup last year, it made us a lot stronger. The four of us that had played in the professional game helped the rest of them that didn't quite know what a World Cup or international stage would look like. But yeah, I think this Phoenix team has been so good, and I know that it's only the start. We're pushing now, and it's the season, and that's not a position we wanted to be in. We wanted to be pushing right from the start, and in training we have been, but we haven't quite been getting the performances, and so I think to be able to do that today, it makes it so much easier, and now we just have to go out there again and keep doing that for the rest of the season.
Kate, it is a win to celebrate, to enjoy. Thank you so much for joining us on Dub Zone. We're going to let you go and celebrate with your teammates.
Thank you very much.
Kate Taylor from the Knicks joining us after she scored an absolute cracker of a volley to get that win over Sydney FC. And you can feel it, Ish, can't you? Just how pumped they are. Finals aren't an option this year, but a win over a top side, that's big.
Yeah, and I think what Kate was saying about, they've been doing the right things, but just not getting that goal. And it only takes like one or two good opportunities to go into the back of the net for you to really be a lot more positive about it, but and a fantastic finish from her as well.
You can tell why she's the captain,
Yeah.
can't you? What a great talker too. Like after the elation of that win, just so composed and had an answer for everything, and just brilliant. You love to see it.
I think what I really enjoyed hearing as well was Kate say, and as most players should do, that there's still parts of my game that I need to improve. I need to go away leading into the World Cup. she's already assessed how she played today, and it's only a couple of minutes after. So it's like, the win's great. Let's not get carried away too much because there's always room for improvement.
Another upset today was Adelaide's victory over Perth Glory. Perth really desperate for the 3 points in this one as they push hard for a spot in the finals. But Teo, it was Adelaide once again finding the goals that they lacked earlier in the season to cause an upset at home.
And Perth won't believe they've lost this. I mean, 11 shots, 4 on target, but they were gilt-edged chances. 2.33 XG to 0.93 of Adelaide. 15 shots, 4 on target of their own. So that's where XG is valuable, by the way, because both teams had 4 shots on target, but Perth's had some great opportunities to score, didn't take them in the end. Ish, we saw the first half. Perth created a lot, weren't able to get the goal, and then early in the second half, Hannah Blake, what a day for New Zealand, gets in, scores the tap-in. But it was after this that Adelaide showed real character and a fighting spirit that during their long streak of not scoring goals and not winning games, they just weren't able to muster this level of performance, and it needed a bit of luck. This will probably go down as an own goal to Morgan Aquino, but this is what they were desperate for during that streak where they couldn't win a game. Now it comes for them, and they get the win by going on to take out the game.
Yeah, and sometimes you need a little bit of luck, don't you? I think poor Aquino with that dropped goal, and which really cost them the game in the end. But, at the other end, then there's poor finishing, not clinical enough, not getting enough chances on target, not testing the keeper enough. I think as a player, you walk away from those games thinking what a missed opportunity and that you should have done better.
And Fiona Wirtz gets the match-winning goal, just her second of the season, both of them headers. And that's a great moment for her. And Perth, well, this was the chance right at the end. Annalee Grove, after the little clever backheel from Alana Janchevsky, played into the path of Abby Green, and an amazing save from Annalee Grove.
It was quality.
And to make it 3 upsets from 3 games here on Dub Zone this afternoon, Brisbane Roar got the win over Western United 2-0, and it was a brace to Shay Connors, who's been good enough to join us on Dub Zone this Savo. Shay, let's talk about your goals to begin with, because watching on, it feels like you have absolutely hit peak form at the right time.
Yeah, it's been incredible. I got 2 great balls, so it was just about putting them away in a huge game. So it was great for us.
Talk me through that combination then, because that opening goal with Katrina Gorry, with Minnie putting the ball through, it feels like that combination between the two of you is hitting all the right areas.
Yeah, it was a great ball. We just made eye contact, and she was pretty far back away from me. And then I just kind of looked at her, and then I just started running. And then I pretty much knew I only had probably 1 touch to hit it 1 time. So, oh wow, I haven't seen it yet.
Shay, that's 5 and 5 for you now. What changed? Because for the start of the season, you couldn't buy a goal. Now you can't stop scoring. Was there a turning point? Was it something that happened in a game? Was it something that happened in training? Where did the turning point come?
I think at the beginning of the season, I was maybe just too focused on defending and not getting up the field enough. And then when I think when you don't get a few goals at a forward, I feel like then everything starts being really difficult, and you put too much pressure on even the simple tap-ins. And I don't know, I kind of just started backing myself and just trying to play free and getting into those attacking positions that are closer to goal, because when I'm near the 18, I know I can finish it.
As far as beating Western today, it's your first win of the season against a team in the top 4, and that's coming off the back of the draw against Melbourne Victory as well, where you also scored. Have Raw left their run a little bit too late, or are you still thinking that you can gate crash the top 4?
I mean, we're looking to gate crash 100%. I think, honestly, a few of the draws that we had have come to bite us, probably. But, I mean, we just beat the top team, and like you said, obviously draw to victory, where I think we were unlucky not to win that game. I think we played really well. So I feel like if you can beat the top of the table, why can't you beat the next 3 games that we have? There's no excuses, because Western pretty much have beaten everyone. So if we can beat them, we might as well try to beat everyone else.
Shay, we can see how happy everyone was when you scored, especially that second goal. You had stacks on and everybody was jumping all over you. Tell us what it feels like to score in a fixture like that, and I guess just the mentality of the squad heading into what's left of the season. You said that you're going to gate crash the top 4, so what's the vibe within the team? What are you guys saying?
Yeah, I think the second goal was huge, because honestly, they were putting us under the pump a bit, and I feel like that was just the secured goal. And the team know I had a former teammate pass away this week. I just found out, so everyone was just getting around me, so I think that made it a bit special as well. But I think everyone just knows that we believe in ourselves, and I feel like that second goal just really solidified that we're here and that we are good too, and we have a place in the finals if we can win the next few games.
How tough has that been this week for you personally, Shane? How important has that team around you at Brisbane Roar been?
Yeah, it's been incredible. I actually found out like 20 minutes before training on Thursday, so it was awful, honestly. But the team is like family, and so it's been. I'm so lucky to have like the people I have around me, and it's a great group of girls, and I'm really thankful for all of them.
Well, we're thinking of you. Thank you so much for joining us on Dub Zone today,
you.
and congratulations on both the brace and the victory.
Thank you so much.
Shay Connors joining us on Dub Zone after scoring 2 goals for Brisbane Roar, and she spoke there as well, Ish, about those combinations too, that combination with Minnie and the eye contact to say, yeah, I'm going.
Yeah, we were talking about it before, don't you? You know, as soon as you see Minnie have a quick glance up at you and get her head back down, you get the afterburners on because you know she's going to put it into a perfect area for you, which she did, and using Shay's pace there. And like 2 fantastic finishes, really composed, really impressed with both her finishes. After such a tough week for her personally, I've had something similar. And while you think it's really difficult to front up and actually play a football match, I always think a football pitch is my happy place and my safe place. And it's where you can kind of, you know, switch off and just enjoy being in the moment. And it's wonderful for her and that she got the 2 goals and Brisbane got the win.
Who have we got tomorrow? Wanderers hosting Canberra, Wanderers Football Park, 4 p.m. Kat?
Are you going to ask me who I think is going to win?
Who you got, Wanderers or Canberra?
I'm going to go Canberra. I think Michelle Heyman's in great form, isn't she? She's still scoring goals for fun.
And I think Melbourne City, they've got Pote Rojas back. You can't argue with what she brings to that side.
Oh, that derby's going to be huge. I'm looking forward to that on Monday too.
2 big games of Liberty A-League action coming up for you. One tomorrow, one Monday. Don't miss either. But thank you so much for joining us on Dub Zone this afternoon. Taya Pelizzeri, always good to see you.
Young Socceroos, 1 a.m. tomorrow morning. I'll be up. You'll be up. Make sure you watch against Uzbekistan.
I don't know when you sleep, Taya.
He doesn't. Taya actually does not
Legend.
sleep.
Kat, her dad, thank you for your company as always.
Thank you, Ish. Awesome to be next to you today, to pick your brain on all things football. It's been awesome.
And hear your incredibly unbiased commentary around that Brisbane Roar victory. Ish, thanks so much.
Thanks very much. Am I going to be invited back or is that it?
Definitely not. It's one and done for Alicia Ferguson here on Dub Zone, but we'll have you back at home. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Have a great Saturday night. Don't forget, plenty more Liberty A-League action coming up for you this weekend. See you soon.